Hello everyone. Welcome to Frightening Tales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So, before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's case. Story 1. This case takes us to the small village of Alfurch Church in northeast Warwickshire, England. In December 1996, the media was dominated by the story of a disturbing road rage incident with the ferocity of the attack leaving many people in shock. Now, over to the other half of Truly Criminal to tell you about today's case. 25-year-old Lee Harvey worked as a bus driver, and his mom, Maureen, said all he wanted in life was to be a husband and a good father. His parents described him as cheeky and funny, always bringing so much good energy to everything. We had a young daughter, Danielle, whom he doted on, and Maureen said they were like two peas in a pod. He was separated from Danielle's mother, but the pair remained friendly and supportive of each other in raising their daughter together. 27-year-old Tracy Andrews had dreams of becoming a model and was working as a bartender when she met Lee in a club in 1994. Tracy also had a daughter 1 year apart in age from Lee's. She gave birth to her baby girl Carla when she was 21. But the relationship with her then partner was tumultuous, and less than a year later the relationship ended. As soon as she and Lee met, the couple's connection was instant. They had a passionate and fast-moving relationship. And friends and family said they were inseparable from the get-go. It was said that Tracy was always incredibly possessive over her partners, and the relationships were always volatile. Lee was also a jealous person, and fights would often break out between the pair over the attention the other might get. Ex-partners said that Tracy had a vicious temper, often getting violent with them. Arguments between her and Lee would escalate and get out of control quickly, and violent outbursts would often ensue. Despite this, Lee moved into Tracy's flat after just 3 months. But he would often return to his parents' house, as Tracy would frequently kick him out, throwing his belongings into bin bags. Despite everyone around the pair seeing how toxic the relationship was, Lee would always move back in and the pair would try and work things out. Lee's mom, Maureen, said that everyone felt the relationship was bad news from the beginning. She said she could tell straight away that Tracy was controlling, paranoid, and extremely insecure. Tracy revealed to Maureen that she had had a difficult childhood and had never recovered from her dad walking out of the family home when she was 6 years old. The more time that passed, the more the relationship continued to grow toxic, dangerously unhealthy, and codependent. Maureen said the arguments became the only predictable thing about the pair. Neighbors would often hear the couple shouting at each other for hours at a time, and police were called on numerous occasions to the flat to break up the fights. Maureen was starting to notice some changes in her son that she didn't like. After finding out that Tracy had bitten Lee on the neck during a vicious fight, she called Tracy, telling her the relationship couldn't continue and that it was unhealthy for the pair to carry on seeing each other. But hers and everyone else's words fell on deaf ears, and the couple carried on. Tracy soon fell pregnant, and although a shock, everyone hoped this might help the couple stop fighting and focus on what was now the most important thing. Lee was over the moon at the prospect of becoming a father for a second time. But Just a short time later, Tracy announced that she had suffered a miscarriage when she fell down some steps as she was out shopping. After 6 months and much to everyone's concern, Lee proposed to Tracy and the pair set about planning their wedding. After another day of explosive rows, Tracy and Lee went to the Marlbrook pub in an attempt to calm things down and patch things up. They left late into the evening and began the short drive back to the flat they shared. In the Bexalv church in Warshatcher, a car pulled up outside the Harvey house. As Lee would often return to his parents' home during fights with Tracy, Morin didn't think too much of it, listening out for him to walk through the door and explain what had happened this time. But Lee wasn't there, and his parents instead opened the curtains to see police officers walking up the driveway. The police explained that Lee and Tracy had been involved in a serious road rage attack as they were driving home from the pub. And tragically, Lee hadn't survived. He had been stabbed over 40 times, and a pathologist later described the attack as frenzied. Lee's fiancée Tracy had survived and she was at the Royal Alexandra Hospital being treated for her injuries. A man staying in one of the cottages alongside the road the attack happened on had come out of the house that night and found Tracy standing by Lee's car while Lee lay motionless in the road covered in blood. The neighbors helped Tracy phone the police and officers quickly arrived on scene. But by the time the police got there, Lee was already dead. Tracy told police that she and Lee had left the pub in Lee's car just before 10 p.m. Shortly into the journey, Lee overtook a dark cold Ford Sierra. This had started what Tracy called a cat and mouse chase. The car began tailgating them, flashing the lights, and both cars began driving at high speeds down the narrow lane. Tracy said that she had shouted at Lee to slow down and ignore the car, but he didn't listen. The Ford Sierra eventually overtook them and Lee got out before an altercation took place between the driver and Lee. The passenger in the other car also exited the vehicle and a physical fight broke out. Lee and Tracy were both hit and Tracy was knocked to the floor. When she got up, she realized Lee had been stabbed during the fight. The people in the other car fled the scene and Tracy cradled Lee with him, dying in her arms. Lee's parents, Morin and Ray, straight away had some questions. Why on earth would someone stab their son to death but leave his fiancée alive, seemingly unharmed, and now a key witness in the case? Why didn't she phone us? Ree asked. Mean and Ray were distraught, but they needed Tracy to talk to them about what had happened that night. They both continuously tried and failed to get hold of Tracy after she was discharged from hospital. They finally got through to Tracy's stepfather, who said she hadn't rung them from the hospital as she'd forgotten their number. Something that Ray and Morin found impossible to believe given the amount of times she had called their home looking for Lee after a fight. Tracy's avoidance of Lee's family was concerning, and her story and reaction to the event after the fact was raising even more questions than answers. Morin said despite the strange and seemingly far-fetched reason behind her not talking to them after Lee was killed, she was still determined to believe in Tracy's story and support her. She said the police had told us she'd been attacked as well, so how could she have been involved? She might have been the last woman in the world I'd wanted Lee to end up with, but for all her faults, I was convinced she loved him. With uncertainty and doubt about what had happened that night, and with rumors still swirling, on December 3, Tracy took part in a press appeal, and the police asked the public for something, anything, that might help them catch the two men in question. As she held Morin's hand, she recounted her version of events, giving descriptions of the men and talking about the same cat and mouse story that had led to the attack. The way he looked, his eyes, his scary eyes, he just didn't seem normal. I saw the man hit Lee. I don't know what with. I didn't see anything. I fell to the floor. I can't remember if I was knocked out for a bit or what. I don't know. I just tried to stop the bleeding really and comfort him as much as I could. Tracy then said that she urged the driver of the car to come forward, saying he was not in trouble and had done nothing wrong. The driver walked off. It's nothing to do with the driver. Whoever this person is that was with you obviously know him, but he's ruined my life. Please just tell us who he is because you won't get in any trouble at all. It was not your fault. The media had already been given one version of events by the police. But Tracy suddenly gave a totally different set of times. At what time did you leave the car? Well, we left about 10 to 10. Something like that, I'd say. I didn't really look at my watch. I don't really know what time I left. 10 to 10, not 10 to 11. No, about 10 to 10. At this point, detectives stepped in to stop Tracy from talking, and the press conference was abruptly brought to an end. We're perhaps getting into a bit too much detail that we don't actually want to go into quite at the moment. Tracy's appeal raised eyebrows with the media and people wondered why she was not holding the driver responsible when the driver had, according to Tracy, been the one to initiate the fight. Police were shocked as this was not anything they had agreed upon. They were definitely looking for the driver as he was an accessory to murder, possibly even a co-conspirator in the case. As the room started to empty, chatter amongst the reporters began. Tracy's imitation of what she called the steried attacker was enough to convince many people that she was capable of that kind of rage and anger. She described the attackers as having. One reporter in particular made a bold claim and outright said he believed they had all just in fact interviewed the real killer. Although it was a devastating thought, Lee's family were questioning Tracy even more. Her story just didn't make any sense and more holes were starting to appear in it. Fortunately, the press conference did generate something for the police. Two witnesses came forward and said they had seen Lee's white Ford Escort that night and he was driving past them on a junction about to turn onto the lane he was killed on. But out of nowhere, Lee's car suddenly braked and stopped in the road. The witnesses said no other cars were following them and there seemed to be no reason for the car braking. And with this, they carried on driving. A day after the press appeal, Tracy attempted suicide by taking an overdose of around 200 pills. She left notes saying she couldn't carry on without Lee. She was taken to hospital where her stomach was pumped and she spent the following 2 days recovering. Morin and Ray visited Tracy in hospital and while they were there, Tracy grabbed Morin's hand and said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I've done." After this, she went quiet and turned her head away. And Morin and Ray left. Ray said to his wife, "That's the closest thing we're going to get to a confession." Tracy's story just wasn't adding up. And the police could find no evidence that a road rage incident had taken place at all. Investigators had thoroughly checked over the road the car chase and the attack allegedly happened on. It was a narrow single country lane, and if two cars had been speeding and overtaking each other, there would likely be tire marks or something that pointed towards a high-speed chase. But the road and grass along the side were completely clear. The location of the blood in the road in relation to where Tracy had said the attack had happened also didn't match up. And despite Tracy saying the attack had happened outside the vehicle, Lee's blood was found in the back seat of his car. No witnesses could attest to seeing the same dark car Tracy spoke about. And there was a substantial amount of time after Lee had been stabbed before Tracy raised the alarm. Nobody living near or driving along the road at the same time saw or heard anything apart from one person. A child living in one of the cottages near the lane. The 9-year-old said she had heard an argument that night, but only remembered hearing two voices, not four, and it sounded like the car was stationary and parked. Examination of Lee's body found almost 100 strands of Tracy's hair in his hand, which pathologists later determined had to have been taken from Tracy's head with considerable force, possibly during a physical fight, as well as wounds from a blade. Some marks on Lee's body indicated that scissors may have been used. This pointed towards a Swiss Army knife being the murder weapon. Blood on her clothing showed a splash pattern rather than a transfer of blood from holding Lee as he lay dying, as Tracy had claimed. Testing was done on all of Tracy's clothing that she had been wearing that night, which confirmed there was a blood stain on the inside of her boot. Forensic experts found the outline of the shape of a penknife imprinted on the inside of her boot. During her stay at the hospital, she visited the bathroom 6 times in 3 hours, and it was later revealed that she must have disposed of the knife somewhere in the toilets of the hospital. Afternoon. Detectives investigating the murder of a man in last week's so-called road rape attack have arrested a 27-year-old woman. Lee Harvey was stabbed to death in a country lane. His fiancée was with him when he died. An evening in the pub with her boyfriend ended in death. According to 27-year-old Tracy Andrews, she left the pub with Lee Harvey in his Ford Escort. She told police they overtook another car which gave chase. At a press conference, she described what happened to them. Tracy Andrews said Lee Harvey was stabbed to death by a passenger in the second car. An hour ago, West Mia police said they had arrested a 27-year-old woman. Jackie Rowley, BBC News. The same day, Tracy was discharged following her overdose. Police arrested her in connection with the murder of Lee, and on December 19, she was formally charged. She vehemently denied any involvement and adamantly stuck to her story. To everyone's surprise, including the police, the judge made a decision that no one was expecting. Tracy was granted bail while she was awaiting trial and moved in with her mother and stepfather. It was another blow for Lee's family, and it was a highly unusual and controversial decision. Bail on a murder charge is not granted unless the court is absolutely satisfied that there is no significant risk that the person would commit an offense that would likely cause physical or mental injury to another person. In February 1997, Lee was finally laid to rest with hundreds turning out to pay their respects and show their love and support for the Harvey family. In July that year, 7 months after Lee's murder, Tracy's trial began at Birmingham Crown Court. While on the stand, Tracy's defense team asked her about her relationship with Lee as well as her version of events. Tracy stuck to her story and maintained that although the couple fought a lot, she would never go as far as to kill him. She said they broke up all the time, but they truly loved each other and always came back together stronger than before. But a particular revelation Tracy used to highlight an example of this left Lee's family shocked. Tracy revealed that the miscarriage she had told everyone she'd had was actually an abortion that she had got after another fight with Lee. Mean was devastated and called Tracy a lying __, to which Tracy angrily responded by shouting, pointing, and demanding Morin be removed from the courtroom. The judge let Morin stay, but this outburst gave the prosecution the perfect lead into their cross-examination of Tracy. After a few short weeks on trial, Tracy Andrews was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 14 years to serve. The judge said, "Only you know precisely what went on that night, but we have all seen the awful consequences." A year into her sentence, she filed an appeal claiming she was the victim of a miscarriage of justice because of damaging publicity surrounding her case. This appeal was denied. A year after this, in 1999, Tracy wrote a letter to her lawyer, finally admitting she did stab Lee to death, but maintained that it was self-defense. She said it happened in slow motion after a fight between the pair had escalated, and Lee pulled a knife on her. They struggled for a while and she said she had lost control and stabbed him. She claimed she felt sick and ashamed and hated herself for doing that to Lee and his family. The self-defense claim was disputed by many, as most of the stab wounds were to Lee's back and people suspected this came when he was trying to retreat and escape to his car to get away from the attack. A woman that Tracy had had a relationship with while in prison said that Tracy had attacked and strangled her for talking to an ex-girlfriend. She said she was opposed to Tracy ever being released and believed she would kill again if she was let out. Tracy Andrews served the recommended time of 14 years before being released from prison in 2011. She was ordered not to go within 25 miles of Lee's family. Tracy has since married, had reconstructive surgery to alter her appearance, and changed her name multiple times. For Lee's family and friends, the pain of knowing that Tracy is out of prison weighs heavily on them. Morin wrote a book about the case and hers and her family's experiences. She said whenever she looks over old newspaper articles or letters from the case, it feels as if she is looking at someone else's family. Lee Harvey was charming and funny, honest and caring, and his parents often expect him to come walking through the door to see them. His family cherished the good memories and will always remember Lee for the great son and father he was. Story 2. Plumstead, Southeast London. A busy and bustling area offset with commons and walking paths making up what are called the Green Chain Walks. The many routes cover several miles and boast beautiful and relaxing scenery. It was an area that many people felt safe in. However, this feeling of safety and security was shattered as throughout the 1980s and 90s, a monster was stalking the streets of Plumstead. A series of horrifying and violent rapes and sex attacks were committed on the Green Chain Walks. The police investigation was a complex one. They appeared to be dealing with two different types of attacks. The first would take place in open areas like Plumstead Common and Winds Common. These appeared to be at random and unplanned attacks. The second type appeared to be premeditated. After watching and stalking his victim, he would attack them in their home. The one Sinister trait that ran through the attacks was that he would target young mothers accompanied by their children. On one of these occasions, he raped a mother in the upstairs bedroom while her children were downstairs having breakfast. As he left, he said to her, "You should keep your door locked." As the investigation into the savage attacks continued, the country would be rocked by a sadistic and horrifying murder. Wimbledon, London. Famed for its tennis championships. People come from all over the world to experience the prestigious Grand Slam as well as enjoy the picturesque Common. July 15, 1992. Rachel Mail took her 2-year-old son, Alex, and the family dog for a walk on Wimbledon Common. Born in 1968, she had become a mother in her early 20s. Rachel and her partner, Andre, lived with their son, Alex, near the Common. She adored being a mother and doted on her son. Another dog walker was heading to a more secluded area of the Common when he heard a young child saying, "Wake up, Mommy." Following the sound of the voice, he soon came across a disturbing scene. Rachel McHale had been brutally stabbed, slashed, and sexually assaulted. Alex was found clinging to her lifeless body, begging her to wake up. It was revealed she had been stabbed 49 times in a frenzied and ferocious attack. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Alex was not physically harmed. Good evening. The savage knife murder of a young mother in broad daylight stunned detectives in London today. This was an area popular with families, and even the more secluded parts of the Common were still fairly open. The fact her clothes were disheveled indicated a sexual motive for the murder. She was 23 when she died. She was a shining light, a bright star in my life and everybody who knew her. Somebody must know something from the ferocity of the attack. I couldn't just walk down the road and not be noticed. And I would say to anybody who does know this person, no matter how they feel about them, please come forward before you destroy the video. The Metropolitan Police came under immense pressure to catch the killer before they struck again. The ferocity of the murder left people terrified that it wouldn't be long until there was another one. 32 men were questioned over the murder, but the police's sights soon fell on one man. Colin Stagg was known for walking his dog on Wimbledon Common. He was from nearby Rompton and was somewhat of a social outcast. He also allegedly fit the description given by a few witnesses of a man seen in the area around the time of the murder. Because of the lack of forensic evidence to tie him to the murder or crime scene, police decided to take a different route. They asked criminal psychologist Paul Britton to create a profile of the kind of person they were looking for. They quickly decided that Stagg matched the profile and thus launched Operation Esteli. Operation Esteli was a covert operation designed in part by Paul Britton to see if Colin Stagg would implicate himself in the murder or give anything away. As the investigation into Colin Stagg continued, so too did the Green Chain rapes. The police hadn't connected the rapes to the murder of Rachel Nichol. The sex attacks that followed appeared to be emulating the Wimbledon Common murder. The violence in the rapes began to escalate. More victims began to report that the attacker was armed with a knife. One of the biggest issues the police force had was that the descriptions of the rapist were varied and vague. The man was described as around 5 feet 7 inches or 5 feet 8 inches. The police continued to make appeals and issued an EID of the suspect. Several people came forward and said the effort Looked like a Plumstead resident, Robert Napper. When officers went to speak with him, they quickly realized he was far taller than the description given of the rapist. Napper stood at around 6 feet 2 inches. Due to this discrepancy in height, officers ruled him out. Robert Napper's name, however, just kept coming up. It was reported that a peeping Tom was spying in the windows of houses, especially one inhabited by a lone female. He was subsequently arrested. Following his arrest, the police searched his flat on Plumstead High Street. The flat was a singular room and was tidy and organized. They also found a red metal toolbox containing hunting knives. They found an ATAS maps book with routes planned out and locations highlighted. It covered part of the Green Chain Walk. The contents of the toolbox were not linked to the Green Chain rapes. As part of Operation Esdal, the police sent in an undercover officer from the Metropolitan Police Special Operations Group. So 10. She contacted Stagg and posed as the friend of a woman he had contacted through a Lonely Hearts column. Over the following 5 months, she pretended to be romantically interested in Stagg, spoke to him on the phone and exchanged letters detailing sexual fantasies. She also met with him. And on one of these occasions during a meeting in Hyde Park, they spoke about Rachel's murder. To try and get Stagg to implicate himself, the undercover officer claimed to enjoy hurting people. His mumbled reply was, "Please explain. As I live a quiet life. If I've disappointed you, please don't dump me. Nothing like this has happened to me before." When she went on to say, "If only you had done the Wimbledon Common murder. If only you had killed her, it would be all right." He replied, "I'm terribly sorry, but I haven't." After winning his trust, the officer worked on getting Stagg to talk about his sexual fantasies. She then passed these on to Paul Britton, and he interpreted said fantasies as violent. Colin Stagg did not, however, admit to the murder of Rachel Nichol. Following the undercover investigation, Colin Stagg was subsequently arrested for the murder of Rachel Nichol, but he maintained his innocence. The fantasies of the increasing deviant, the increasing violence, the increasing deviant. Do you remember this letter now, Colin Stagg? The man then goes over to his pile of clothes and produces some string and a knife. Up until this point in time, I had never mentioned a fantasy with a knife before. Up until this point in time, I had never mentioned a fantasy to you. Do you remember that? And you told me the police had shown you photographs of how Rachel Nichol was lying about how she was murdered. And you in fact lay down in that position. You lay down like this. Do you remember? And you curled and you had your hands like this. And you told me that her head was tilted back slightly like this. Do you remember? Do you remember that, Colin? The psychologist who helped design Operation Sale said he vehemently disagreed with the use of the letters detailing sexual fantasies and that he didn't know about their existence until after they had been sent. The case went to trial at the Old Bailey and the problems in the investigation were laid bare. Mr. Justice Agnell said that the excessive zeal shown by investigators was deceptive conduct of the grossest kind. He excluded the entrapment evidence, forcing the prosecution to withdraw its case. The case was thrown out and in September 1994, Colin Stagg was sensationally acquitted of murdering Rachel Nichol. My life has been ruined by a mixture of half-baked psychological theories and some stories written to satisfy the strange sexual requests of another police officer. The judge recognized that there was never any evidence against me. The law has been upheld, but where is the justice? I understand that the police will now keep the files on my daughter's murder open, but they are not looking for anyone else. One of the residents of Plumstead was 27-year-old Samantha Bissett. She lived in the basement flat on the edge of Winds Common with her partner Conrad and their 4-year-old daughter, Jasmine. Samantha was a keen camera woman and often filmed her young daughter, documenting her life as she grew up. Conrad described Samantha as a feisty woman and a feminist determined to give her daughter the best start in life she possibly could. Jasmine was a bright, chatty, and happy little girl. She got on well with children and adults alike and shared a deep and close bond with her parents. Samantha would often take Jasmine outside to play on the surrounding grass and in the wooded areas, making sure she had plenty of time outdoors. November 3, 1993, Conrad arrived home and found the flat door locked. Believing Samantha must have taken Jasmine out, he let himself in. He noticed an odd stain on the carpet as he opened the front door. Upon going into the kitchen, he saw Samantha's clothes strewn all over the floor. It was then he realized that something was seriously wrong. After he entered the living room, the horrifying picture of what had occurred came to light. Someone had forced their way into Samantha's flat and stabbed her more than 70 times in the chest and neck. She had also been mutilated post-mortem. Then came the next question. Where was Jasmine? Jasmine was found in her bedroom where she had been sexually assaulted and then smothered to death. Detective Sergeant Alan Jack Ehrman was one of the first officers to arrive at the Bissett residence. He explained that this did not appear to be a first offense. This was a criminal whose violence had escalated and progressed to this point. The crime scene was so horrific the police photographer needed to take 2 years off work as it had completely traumatized him. She had been stabbed with such ferocity, it is believed she had died quickly. The killer then dragged her body into the living room before mutilating her. Forensic examinations initially turned up nothing. Due to the lack of fingerprints, it was believed that the murderer had worn gloves, but further analysis revealed that the fingerprints of the killer were almost identical to Samantha's, meaning they weren't initially distinguished from each other. When they were checked against police records, it came back with a match. Robert Napper. In May 1994, officers went to his flat and took him into custody. Samantha's partner, Conrad, described that she had woken up one night and had seen a face in the window staring at her as she slept. It is believed that this was Robert Napper and that he had been stalking her before killing her. Around the time of the murder, a witness reported hearing the voices of 2 male assailants with one shouting at the other to leave it. It is believed that this was Napper arguing with and shouting at himself. When it was announced that Napper had been arrested, those who were his acquaintances and those who worked with him were shocked by the nature of the horrific killing. The usually quiet and withdrawn Napper did not, on the face of it, seem like the kind of person capable of committing such an offense. But who exactly was Robert Napper? He was born on February 25, 1966 to Brian and Pauline. Shortly after his birth, his parents moved from Erith, London to the nearby area of Plumstead, and he was the oldest of 4 siblings. Napper's childhood was highly dysfunctional and marred by domestic violence. He often saw his father attacking his mother, and fights between the pair were frequent. When Robert turned 9, his parents divorced. Concerned for their welfare, social services had him and his siblings removed from the home and taken into care. They also had to undergo psychiatric evaluations to assess the damage their tumultuous childhood had caused and subsequently required treatment. Robert would have psychiatric treatment at Maudsley Hospital for 6 years. Robert's school life was also deeply unhappy. He attended Abbeywood Comprehensive, where he had frequent problems as a result of having undiagnosed autism spectrum disorder. Previously referred to as Asperger's, he was socially awkward and struggled to make and maintain friendships in his class. He was often the target of bullies and was picked on by both boys and girls. His peers would later refer to Robert as being despised throughout the school. At the age of 13, his life was turned upside down. While away on a camping trip, he was sexually assaulted by a family friend. The perpetrator would be sent to prison, but the damage had been done. Napper became introverted and would obsess over being clean, organized, and tidy. He became even more reclusive and distant, and his personality began to take a more sinister turn. He started spying on his younger sister while she was naked and began to bully his other siblings, too. When he was a teenager, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He would often be unable to distinguish reality from imagination. He would tell stories of being pursued by the IRA, captured and tortured by them, with his fingers being cut off, and him being able to grow them back. It wouldn't be long until Robert Napper was on the police's radar. In 1986, Napper was convicted of an offense with an air gun. Despite his convictions, at the age of 27, he got a job at a plastics factory working as a machine operator. He also moved into a flat in Plumstead and became increasingly isolated. His relationship with his mother had also began to break down, partly due to his hatred of her new partner. While in custody for the murder of Samantha and Jasmine Bissett, officers researched his home. Further examination of the red toolbox found in his flat drew the police's attention back to the maps they had found. Napper had made a number of notes, which corresponded with several of the Green Chain rapes. The police soon realized that the man they had in custody for the brutal double murder was most likely responsible for the more than 70 rapes and sex attacks that had been committed on the Green Chain walks. They also realized that the height discrepancy was due to the fact that Napper walked with a stoop, this appearing to be shorter than he actually was. His first rape is believed to have taken place in 1989 in a house that was on the edge of the common. It turned out that he had confessed as such to his mother, saying that he had raped a woman on Plumstead Common and that people were out to get him. She went to the police and told them what he had said to her. No case on file matched what his mother had told them, and no further action was taken. After this, Pauline Napper severed all ties with her son. It turned out that the sex attack had actually occurred on Winds Common, meaning the police records didn't match his mother's report. In October 1995, Robert Napper went on trial at the Old Bailey Courthouse in London for the brutal double murder of Samantha and Jasmine Bissett. Despite the initial concerns that they may not have had enough to convict him, a jury was not required in this case. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, citing psychiatric problems. He was sentenced to be held at the high-security Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital. Although this case had been solved, there was another that lingered over the heads of everyone. Rachel Nichol. With a botched police investigation and a wrongful arrest, the police needed to find the culprit. But the case had all but stalled. In December 1995, police went to Broadmoor to interview Robert in connection with Rachel's murder. He refused to answer their questions, leaving them back at square one. In the years that passed and with the police no closer to catching Rachel's killer on the anniversary of the murder, the public pressure to find the culprit came back into the spotlight. 10 years after Rachel's death, DNA techniques had become more refined and readily available to the police. In 2002, Scotland Yard set up a cold case review team to look into Rachel Nichol's murder and try and unearth any new clues. The team was comprised of both current and retired investigators who pored over witness statements, looked at the files of potential suspects, and also considered the possibility that it may be linked to other crimes. When looking at the injuries that Rachel had sustained during the frenzied attack and compared it with other attacks, they consulted those on the forensics team about the improvements that had been made in the science of DNA. They were able to lift the blood from Rachel's clothing and underneath lay the breakthrough they were looking for. In July 2003, it was reported that after 18 months of testing on the clothes worn by Rachel, a microscopic sample of male DNA, which did not belong to either her boyfriend or young son, had been found. The sample was enough to rule people out, but not enough to confirm the identity of the killer. A sample had been taken from the hair of Rachel's son, Alex, and upon reanalysis, it was found to contain samples of paint that they were able to trace to a metal toolbox. In July 2006, a team from Scotland Yard headed to Broadmoor Hospital. They wanted to talk to the now 40-year-old Robert Napper. Officers were there for 2 days while they interviewed him about a potential connection to the murder of Rachel Napper. Finally, after more than a decade of waiting, the police got the news they had been hoping for. The microscopic DNA found on Rachel Napper's clothing came back as a match to Robert Napper. The paint from the toolbox found in Alex's hair also matched the red toolbox used by Napper to hide his knives and maps. When looking at the map found in Napper's toolbox, police found something of interest. The map showed he had ventured out of his comfort zone. The distance between Wimbledon Common and Plumstead had led to him being ruled out initially, despite the similarities in the cases. On one of the pages, Isabella Plantation and Richmond Park had been heavily marked. This was within a walking distance of where Rachel had been murdered. On November 28, 2007, Robert Clive Napper was charged with the murder of Rachel N.L. On December 4 that year, he appeared at the City of Westminster's Magistrates' Court. He was subsequently granted bail on the condition he'd be returned to Broadmoor. It would soon be time for him to enter his plea, and on January 24, 2008, he pleaded not guilty. His trial started in November that year, and the following month he changed his plea. He entered a plea of guilty to the manslaughter of Rachel N.L. on the grounds of diminished responsibility. When sentencing Napper, Mr. Justice Griffith Williams said that it was vital he be detained indefinitely for the protection of the public, saying he was a very dangerous man. It is highly unlikely that Robert Napper will ever be released. When Napper was sentenced, Colin Stagg received a public apology from the Metropolitan Police for his wrongful arrest. It is clear that he is completely innocent of any involvement in that case, and I today apologize to him for the mistakes that were made in the early 1990s. Keith Der, the detective who headed the investigation into Colin Stagg, received intense public scrutiny. Despite the judge condemning their actions and Colin Stagg being acquitted in the years that followed and before Napper was caught, Der continued to press the idea that Stagg was guilty of Rachel Nichols' murder. In 2001, he told the ITV program Real Crime, Colin Stagg has been through a version of justice, albeit truncated, and he has been found not guilty, but I wonder whether he can actually say hand on heart that he believes people will meet him in the streets and believe that. After Stagg was acquitted, Der retired from the police force. He would later go on to face charges of corruption. The determination of the police to prove Colin Stagg was responsible was revealed to have used £3 million from the public purse as estimated by an internal review. The same review also found that vital scientific information had been missed during the investigation. Following the 14 months he spent in custody, Colin Stagg sued the police force for damages totaling £1 million. He has co-authored 2 books about his case, Who Really Killed Rachel with novelist David Kessler and Pariah with journalist Ted Hans. Pariah was published on the same day Napper appeared in court to enter his plea for Rachel's murder. In 2010, the Independent Police Complaints Commission released a report following an investigation into the conduct and actions of the Metropolitan Police Force. It detailed what it described as a catalog of bad decisions and errors. It suggested that had the police acted accordingly on the tip officer and his behavior, including the one by his own mother, the lives of Samantha and Jasmine Bissett could have been spared. The Independent Police Complaints Commission said that as all officers involved had retired and a key senior officer had died, nobody would face disciplinary action. It also ruled out any criminal prosecutions. The female police officer who went undercover in Operation Esther took early retirement from the police in 1998. She would later sue the Metropolitan Police Force after being given support by the Police Federation for damages. It was settled out of court and she received £125,000. This move prompted harsh criticism, including from Rachel Nichols' son when he got older, who had received less than a fifth of that, just £22,000, from the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority. The criminal psychologist who helped form the investigation, Paul Britton, was charged with professional misconduct by the British Psychological Society. However, in 2002, further action was dismissed due to a time delay in the proceedings being brought. After the intense media scrutiny following the murder, Rachel Nichols' partner, André, moved to France with their son. He wrote a book about Rachel's death called The Last Thursday in July, detailing what it was like to go through such a profound loss under such intense media scrutiny and public interest. On August 13, 2008, it was announced by the Home Office that Colin Stagg would receive compensation totaling £76,000. The extent of Robert Napper's crimes may never be fully known, and the damage and hurt his actions have caused are incalculable. Conrad Elam continues to keep the memory of his partner Samantha and daughter Jasmine alive, talking about them and the impact they had on so many people, ensuring they will never be forgotten. Rachel Nichols' partner, Andre, wrote a public letter of apology to Colin Stagg for pointing the finger at him publicly, saying in an interview with The Guardian, "As a parent, you have to set an example. I can't expect Alex to behave in a certain way if I wasn't prepared to do it myself. I made a mistake based on information from apparently reliable sources. I helped put a spotlight on him, which made his life worse." Her son, Alex, remains incredibly close to his father, and they now live in Barcelona. Alex went on to write a book about his experiences titled Letting Go, a true story of murder, loss, and survival. According to Andre, Rachel continues to live on through their son. Her sharpness of intelligence, her wicked sense of fun, and her movements, too. Rachel was tall and elegant, a dancer. Alex has that same elegance. You see it in his gestures, his eyes, his presence. It's been a marathon, but I can look at Alex now and think, I'm in clear water. Mission accomplished. Alex got me through. And Rachel. Story 3. This case takes us back to April 2013 to the most populated city in Yolo County, California. Davis Oliver Jennings Northup Jr., known to most people as Chip, was born in 1925 in Grand Island, Nebraska. He served in the United States Navy during World War II and also worked as an attorney. He loved law, but people said he was always pulling towards writing. He read a lot and loved memorizing classic passages of literature. Chip loved the arts and had been playing guitar since his 30s, performing in different bands. He was also a founding member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Davis. Claudia Morin Mopin, born in 1936, was described by her daughter as a spiritual traveler, moving throughout different religions and denominations. But when she discovered the Unitarian Church, she felt an instant connection. So much so that she said to her daughter, "My husband is at the Unitarian Church." And sure enough, he was. Claudia met Chip there and they soon fell in love. Marrying in 1996. Claudia became a pastoral associate at the church. And just like Chip, she loved performing and was very active in her local theater. Her family said she had such a loving spirit and an ability to make everyone she encountered feel valued. Between the two of them, they had a big and loving family. And Chip's daughter, Mary, said their families blended together effortlessly. Claudia had 3 children, and Chip had 6, along with 2 stepchildren from a previous marriage, and they had 14 grandchildren and 8 great-grandchildren between them. In 2013, the couple had been married for 17 years and were living in a condo in Cowell Boulevard. Their family said they were living an idyllic life, surrounded by so many people that loved them, living in a great community. Tragically, in April that year, Chip and Claudia's family and friends, and the community would be left shattered by a truly frightening series of events. Daniel William Marsh was born on May 14, 1997. In 2008, Daniel made national headlines. He received an American Red Cross Heroes Award for saving his father, Bill's life. Bill had had a heart attack and Daniel had used CPR to save him. But the same year, things would quickly start to unravel for Daniel. His parents began a tough and contentious divorce after it was discovered that his mother had had an affair with Daniel's former kindergarten teacher. Daniel was enraged with the woman his mother had had an affair with. And at 10 years old, he started having dark thoughts. He fantasized about killing his teacher by strangling her or slitting her throat. A year later, he told his therapist about the thoughts that he had been having and how he was fascinated with the idea of torture. He told the therapist he wanted to make these fantasies a reality. He was diagnosed with adjustment disorder with depressed mood. And as he entered 7th grade, he started seeing a clinical social worker. In August 2010, he was prescribed 1 to 2 capsules of Prozac daily. Daniel entered his teenage years going back and forth between his parents' houses, who were now living apart. But when he turned 14, his dad threw him out for good due to his constant drinking and smoking, and he went to live with his mother permanently. In 2011, Daniel developed anorexia and was placed in an intensive outpatient program to help treat him. Following his release, he began taking Celexa, which was then switched to Lexapro and then back to Prozac. He was also given antipsychotic medication. A doctor noted that Daniel had started having feelings of derealization with his out-of-body experiences occurring numerous times a week. The more time went on, the more Daniel's violent thoughts manifested. Whenever he looked at a person, he thought about how he would kill them. He developed a fascination with a site called bestgore.com, promoting gore porn and other videos showing gory content, and Daniel started setting fires and harming animals, too. He also became interested in serial killers, showing a particular fascination with Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy. According to one of his friends, Daniel strangled a cat in the street and said to his friends, "I just wanted to. I hated that cat." He then asked his friend if he could kill his dog, too. Daniel confided in a school counselor about his thoughts, and as a result, the police were called to the school. Daniel was involuntarily hospitalized, and his medication was switched yet again. Daniel later told his school psychologist about wanting to kill his classmates, possibly even by way of a school massacre. When the counselor asked if he would ever act on these feelings, he said, "I have full confidence that I could hurt these people." Following this, a police officer was again brought to the school, but at this time, it was determined that Daniel posed no danger to himself or others, and no further action was taken. Soon after this, Daniel had another meeting with the school counselor, this time going into even more detail, describing how he wanted to peel people's skin off them and cut off their eyelids. He said that these fantasies only scratched the surface of his thoughts and that he had given up fighting them. However, Daniel's statements were not disclosed to the authorities because it was agreed upon that there was no identified victims. Daniel made no attempts to hide his disturbed feelings and impulses and began divulging his secrets more and more. Friends of Daniel later recalled that he said if he killed anyone and got caught, he would simply claim insanity. But Daniel's dark fantasies would soon manifest in a terrifying way. That morning, Chip and Claudia were unusually absent from their church. No one had heard from them, and their phone was ringing out. Later on, Chip failed to show up for a gig with his band. After nearly 5 decades as the guitarist and lead singer, Chip was never known to be a no-show. Chip's son, Robert, visited the couple's condo, but soon left, assuming the pair had simply gone out of town. But as the evening came around, and there was still no word from either of them, family members contacted the authorities, requesting a welfare check be carried out. Claudia's daughter, Laura, along with the police, went to the couple's home again. After ringing the doorbell and getting no answer, Laura went round the back. She and the officers found one of the windows open, with the window screen slashed. Looking through the bedroom window, they saw bloodstains. Police used a flashlight to look into the couple's bedroom, and tragically, the bodies of 87-year-old Chip and 76-year-old Claudia could be made out. They were found with over 60 stab wounds each, and their bodies had been mutilated. Inside Claudia's abdomen was a mobile phone, and a drinking glass had been put into Chip's body, too. The Yolo County District Attorney said, "It was the most horrific, depraved murder I've ever seen as the district attorney of this county. The appalling murders of such a beloved couple stunned the Davis community and left everyone in a state of fear and shock. Numerous task force investigators from different areas, including 25 FBI agents, jumped on board the case. However, no physical evidence could be found at the scene. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, and no footprints. Nothing of value appeared to have been stolen, and police weren't even sure if they were looking for one perpetrator or more. No one that knew the couple could think of any possible motive. The crime seemed incredibly personal, and officers wondered if the killer or killers were close to Chip and Claudia, possibly even having a key to the condo and cutting the window as a distraction. Oliver, Chip's grandson, was briefly looked at when police found out he had schizophrenia. Robert, Chip's son, and Oliver's father said as a family they faced 2 days of over 12 hours of questioning. But Robert said he knew his father would have wanted everyone to cooperate as much as possible. So, they stuck it out without a lawyer present. When police searched Robert's home, they found that the carpet had been steam cleaned on the same day the couple had been killed. Something which Robert agreed, although didn't look good, was nothing more than bad timing. They also found a picture drawn by Tony, Robert's son, which depicted a man holding a knife standing over 2 children in a bed. Chip and Claudia's family said that Tony and Oliver were so close to Chip. They both adored him and would never have acted in any violent way towards him or Claudia. The Northup family, Tony in particular, felt incredibly persecuted and as if the finger was being pointed at him. Even though Tony's name was eventually cleared, he still felt that many people had their doubts about him. And this left him carrying a huge burden following such intense questioning and accusatory comments from so many people. Sadly, 3 years after the couple's deaths, Tony would take his own life. While the police were still working around the clock to solve the crime, the real killer was so proud of what they had done. It didn't take long for them to start bragging about it to people. On the same day the couple were found, Daniel Marsh told a close friend that he had been the one to commit the horrific crime. The following day, he confessed again to more people. He asked his girlfriend if she had heard about what had happened to the couple, to which she said she hadn't. Daniel then also told her that he had done it, smiling and telling her how amazing it had felt, and proudly giving her all the details. Daniel could not stop telling people, and in the days and weeks that followed, he continued to talk about it to anyone that would listen, saying that it was the best experience he had ever had. And if his confession wasn't enough, he showed a friend several items that linked him to the crime scene, including the knife, gloves, and the ski cap, boots, and jacket he had worn that night. Daniel's friend and Daniel's girlfriend started speaking with each other about what Daniel had told them. They did not initially report his confessions to anyone else as they were unsure if he was telling the truth. And if he was being truthful, they were afraid of what Daniel might do. Disturbingly, Daniel's mood appeared to improve after the murders of Chip and Claudia, and he was even named Student of the Month. But just a short while later, one of his friends informed the school that Daniel was carrying a knife around with him. Following this, he was suspended. Daniel's girlfriend broke up with him, and shortly after Daniel crept into her house, leaving her fearing for her life. His ex-girlfriend confided in one of Daniel's friends about the incident, which prompted him to talk to Daniel's father, Bill. He told him about the murders and what Daniel had said, but Bill believed none of it. His friends finally contacted the police and spent several hours in the station telling them everything. The next day, on June 17, a high school resource officer brought the now 16-year-old Daniel in for questioning. Daniel was interrogated by Detective Ariel Pana and FBI Special Agent Chris Campion. Daniel's tune had drastically changed, and he spent 3.5 hours crying and denying any involvement. But when Detective Panda played a recording of a phone call between two of the people implicating Daniel in the crimes, Daniel's denials came to an end and he started to confess. On that computer, I did research on psychopaths. Yeah. Why did you do that? I looked up sociopaths and psychopaths because I always found it fascinating. And the more I've aged, the more I can relate, because I don't feel sympathy for other people at all. I don't feel empathy for them. And whether I like that or not, it's the way it is. It's just like I want to hurt people. I want to kill people, but I don't want to want that. I wish it wasn't that way. Daniel admitted to leaving his mother's house with the intention of killing that night. He left between 2 and 3 a.m. armed with a 6-in knife and spent time wandering around the streets of Davis looking for open doors and windows. Daniel said he had found what he was looking for at 406 Cowell Boulevard, a residence just 2 doors down from where his dad lived. He cut open a window screen and crawled through the window. He waited in the living room until he heard the sounds of snoring coming from the bedroom and then entered. It was at that point that Claudia woke up and saw Daniel and started to scream. Daniel started stabbing her in the torso, with Claudia begging for her life. Chip woke up too, and Daniel then turned the knife on him. Daniel described continuing to stab the couple even after they had died, saying it just felt right. He told the officers what he had done in gruesome and graphic detail and told them all the evidence they needed was in his mother's garage. He had kept the bloodied clothing and knife as souvenirs, and it was determined that he had put tape around his shoes to avoid leaving footprints. During his interrogation, Daniel said he said these feelings were only heightened when Chip and Claudia were conscious and resisting against the attack. Agent Campion then took an unusual route. You mentioned that pretty much everybody you meet, you have thoughts about killing them and how you would kill them. Yeah. So, how would you kill me? There's a lot of ways. Choking you to death with your tie. Okay. beating your face into the mirror until it broke and using the glass to cut your arteries, gouging your eyes out and just smashing your face into the wall. Nothing personal. Daniel was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special enhancements, for he also faced enhancements for the use of a deadly weapon during the murders. Rowena Shadex is live in Davidson Row. The teenager will now be charged as an adult. That is correct, Stephanie. Charged as an adult in this disturbing double homicide, first-degree murder. Charges will be filed officially tomorrow. And take a look at this. This is one of the homes that was searched yesterday by FBI. It belongs to the suspect's mother. No one has been home all day. A newspaper remains in the driveway reporting her son's arrest. They were asleep and it was peaceful and they didn't even know what happened. That's what Northrup's daughter Mary wanted to believe. But now with Daniel charged as an adult along with disturbing enhancements of lying in wait and torture, force the family to face some harsh facts. All the things that happened to them that we don't want to know. I'm sorry. Mary, whose father was a lawyer for the underdog, is certain her dad would want this. He would like to see this kid get justice, to be properly represented. I know he wouldn't want him put to death, but I also know that he was a man who believed that people needed to pay for their crimes. Again, Daniel Marsh will be in court tomorrow for his arraignment, charged as an adult. Daniel Marsh entered a plea of not guilty, but later changed this to not guilty by reason of insanity, something officers were already anticipating. Daniel was set to be tried as an adult, although his juvenile status made him ineligible for the death penalty and life in prison without parole. The maximum sentence he faced was 52 years to life. Daniel's attorneys, 2 of the top public defenders, argued that the maximum sentence would constitute cruel and unusual punishment when imposed on a juvenile. But prosecutors were fighting hard for the maximum possible sentence to be issued, believing nothing else would be appropriate. Assistant Chief Deputy Michael Cabral said that in the almost 3 decades he had been a prosecutor, he had never seen such a heinous and reprehensible act or a defendant with such an evil soul. Daniel's defense team called in a psychiatrist, Dr. Matthew Sear. When he first met Daniel, Daniel threatened to kill him. He found Daniel to be mentally ill, but sane, and responsible for the crimes. Despite this, Daniel's attorneys pressed on with the insanity defense and filed a motion to suppress his June 17 confession, arguing that the interrogation began under false pretenses and that Daniel had made many requests to go home. His attorneys also argued that the various different medications Daniel had been prescribed over the years had had a huge effect on his violent thoughts and fantasies. But the prosecution maintained that when you looked at Daniel's medical records, he was having these feelings long before he was taking any medication. Daniel William Marsh's trial began on September 2, 2014. Daniel was now 17 years old, and the trial was being presided over by Judge David Reed. The man there with the tie, Daniel Marsh, hid in the couple's home, waiting for them and then torturing them in their final hours. KC3's Kevin Oliver was in the courtroom today. Kevin, what can you tell us? Well, the courtroom was packed. There wasn't an empty seat in there. Sheriff said he's actually brought Daniel Marsh in through a side entrance to the courthouse, a blocked entrance, and put a jacket over his head to hide him as he was brought in. he was kept separate from all of the other inmates, mostly because they're all adults. And even though he's being tried as an adult, he's still a juvenile. So, he was kept at a distance from most everybody else in the courtroom. 16-year-old Daniel Marsh stood before the court through a side doorway, shielded from view of the public, including his father and friends who were in court. Marsh provided one-word answers as he waived his right to a preliminary hearing within 10 days. The judge denied him bail, and relatives of the victims could be heard whispering yes in agreement. The teen is accused of killing 87-year-old Oliver Chip Northrum and 76-year-old Claudia Mopin in April. Friends of Marsh said they saw him in the days before his arrest and had a hard time believing he could be responsible. He did have a lot of joy in his life, and personally I couldn't ever see him doing what he's been accused of just from the side that I've seen from him. Prosecutors have not revealed the motive behind the double murder or any relationship between Marsh and the couple. Marsh's father did live near the couple until recently, putting his home on the market. KC has decided to show the 16-year-old's face and release his name because he is being tried as an adult. Marsh's defense attorney had asked the judge to ban cameras from the courtroom. The judge denied that motion, but did allow him to appear in a dress shirt and tie rather than customary jail clothes. Now, his defense attorney asked that he appear in regular clothing because they're concerned about the jury seeing him on TV. A potential jury seeing him on TV and in the newspaper in that jail clothes, and a presumption by seeing that he might be guilty. Daniel's attorneys claimed that the side effects of the medication he had taken, combined with his mental health issues, triggered an uncontrollable rage and violence and rendered him temporarily insane. But the prosecution said that Daniel had carefully planned the murder, and the entire event had been premeditated for a long time. Daniel's old friends and his ex-girlfriend all took to the stand to tell their sides of the story. And Daniel's old therapist and psychiatrist also spoke of their time working with and treating him. On September 26, 2014, after a 5-week trial and less than 2 hours of deliberations, the jury had reached a unanimous verdict. Daniel William Marsh was found guilty on both counts of first-degree murder and all the special circumstances. The next big task of the jury was to determine whether Daniel was deemed sane or insane. 4 days later, they had reached that verdict, too. The jury found Daniel to be sane when he had committed the murders. Judge Reed sentenced Daniel to the maximum term of life in prison with parole eligibility after 52 years. He was given 25 years to life for each count of murder, plus 2 years for special enhancements. Judge Reed pointed out that Daniel was proud of his crime and mutilated the victims' bodies out of curiosity. He also stated that Daniel's actions were not recklessly impulsive. They were very much pre-planned and thought out. When Senate Bill 260 was passed regarding the sentencing of juvenile offenders, it meant that if the sentence given was less than 25 years to life, when the offender reached their 20th year of incarceration, they could be eligible for parole. If the sentence is greater than 25 years to life, eligibility for parole would occur in their 25th year of incarceration. California voters also passed Proposition 57 in 2016. This meant that judges in a juvenile court must decide whether a young offender be tried in an adult court or a juvenile one. 2 years later, the Supreme Court in California ruled that this could be applied retroactively for cases that hadn't yet reached their conclusion. In February 2018, the California Court of Appeal conditionally reversed Daniel's 2014 conviction. It would now need to be decided whether he should continue to serve his adult sentence. A transfer hearing was held and prosecutors filed a motion to transfer him to an adult court, but the legal complexities surrounding the case continued to create many difficulties. Governor Jerry Brown signed Senate Bill 1391 into law. This meant that juveniles under the age of 16 could not be tried in an adult court. Senate Bill 1391 caused vocal opposition from both prosecutors and the family and friends of Chip and Claudia. In September 2018, the California District Attorney Association held a press conference urging the governor to veto the bill. The family of Chip and Claudia presented their cases and highlighted the damage Daniel had caused. And alongside this, prosecutors also wrote an open letter to Governor Brown which read in part, Senate Bill 1391 eliminates the authority for a court to decide whether a 14 or 15-year-old charged with certain serious offenses is unfit for the juvenile system. In reference to Daniel, it said it wasn't just the families of Chip and Claudia who were outraged. Citizens of Davis sent over 300 letters to the court stating their opposition to Daniel being remanded in the juvenile justice system. Upon signing the bill, Governor Brown said that there was a need for redemption and reformation were possible. There is a fundamental principle at stake here. Whether we want a society which at least attempts to reform the youngest offenders before consigning them to adult prisons, where their likelihood of becoming a lifelong criminal is so much higher, he said. He did note, however, that the testimonies he had heard from Chip and Claudia's family had weighed heavily on him. As the legal battles were being fought back and forth, a video was uploaded to YouTube. It showed Daniel Marsh giving a TED Talk from prison entitled, He detailed alleged abuse and difficulties he had faced in his life and said that he was now a reformed character and should be given another chance. The video caused enormous hurt and distress to Chip and Claudia's family, as well as many others affected by Marsh's actions. The video was taken down by YouTube within 2 days of its upload, but it is still available to view on the internet. The takedown of the video was a small victory, the family said, but nothing compared to the legal battle that lay ahead. Daniel's defense team filed for a motion of continuance of the hearing for after January. This meant that by then, Senate Bill 1391 would be effective. Prosecutors hit back, however, saying that the case was being heard and dealt with current law, not a law that was in the future and yet to come. Despite their best efforts, the defense's motion was denied, and the hearing went ahead. During the hearing, Daniel took to the stand himself to state why he felt his case should be heard in a juvenile court as opposed to an adult one. You cannot remember the offense. Is that true? That's what I've told him, but it's not true. Why would you say that? Because I haven't wanted to remember it. Why not? Because it was unbelievably horrific and horrendous. And it's hard for me to even wrap my mind around how I could have done something that awful. And I guess I've just been afraid to actually face that. But the prosecution came in strong. And as part of their case, they called Matthew Logan to the stand. Matthew Logan was a forensic psychologist and an expert in psychopathy. He explained on the psychopathy checklist, Daniel had Scored 35.8 out of a potential 40. He said this was one of the highest scores he had ever seen. The tension was palpable. Judge McAdam was about to read his decision. He ruled in favor of the prosecution. Daniel was remanded to state prison to continue serving his adult sentence. Judge McAdam said the risk posed by potentially releasing him was not one worth taking. There is virtually no chance that Marsh will be rehabilitated before he turns 25 years old, he said. Claudia's daughter, Victoria, voiced her relief, saying less than a month after this decision was reached, Daniel filed a writ requesting that the order of transfer be reviewed. The issue that had to be considered was, had Judge McAdam abused his discretion by holding the hearing before the Senate bill went into effect? This righted, but the legal battles did not stop there. On December 14, 2018, Daniel's team filed a petition requesting that the order denying the RIT was be reviewed. The petition raised the same issues as the RIT itself. And on February 13, 2019, the RIT was denied by the California Supreme Court. As the Senate bill was now in full force, his attorneys filed an appeal requesting that Daniel's conviction be overturned retroactively. Daniel Marsh murdered Oliver Northrup and his wife Claudia Maupin in 2013 when he was 15 years old, but a state law passed in 2018 prohibits anyone under 16 from being tried as an adult, and that could include him. 48 Hours correspondent Aaron Moriarty has been following this story for years. Aaron, good morning. We're still waiting on the court's decision in this case, and this is why it matters. There's a belief in this country based on research that young criminals can and should be rehabilitated. But California authorities say that Daniel Marsh may be an exception. Daniel Marsh, now 24 years old, is asking for an early release from prison. It's an appealable judgment under 1237. On Wednesday, his attorney, Mark Greenberg, argued before a remote panel of judges that Marsh should never have been tried and convicted as an adult, despite the horrific crime that he committed when he was just 15. Michelle Newcomb argued Marsh's verdict was final in 2018 and he shouldn't be allowed to drag the victim's family through never-ending appeals. As Laura said, I am Victoria Heard and I am the eldest daughter of Claudia Maupin. Daniel Marsh confessed and in 2014 was tried under California law as an adult due to the heinousness of his crimes. My family and I endured a 5-week murder trial that led to his conviction and a sentence of 52 years to life. He is currently serving that sentence at Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, California. In 2008, a new law, Prop 57, granted Marsh a fitness hearing to determine if his sentencing should be revoked and if he should be retried as a juvenile. While incarcerated, he had the crime images, "My mother's wounds," tattooed on his body. This murderer has now appealed that decision and has asked to be retroactively considered under California Law SB 11391. The hearing date is set for August 18, 2021 in the California Court of Appeals. That is next week. This is our third time dealing with somebody who heinously murdered my parents. If he wins this appeal on August 18, he could be out on the streets of Davis as early as May 14, 2022. He will be unsupervised, without parole, and his record will be sealed. He will have served 8 years The family of an elderly Davis couple. Murdered in their sleep, now breathing a huge sigh of relief. CBS 13's Marley. Jinder just talked with them after yet another grueling court process. Marley, they've been through so much. They really have, Tony and Elizabeth. Grueling to say the least. They've spent the last several weeks on pins and needles waiting for this day. And this isn't the first time this convicted killer has tried to get out of prison. Early. Marsh was sentenced to 52 years to life, but had petitioned for his case to fall under SB 1391. That took effect after he was convicted and bars young teens accused of violent crimes from being tried as adults in the state of California. An appellate court today ruled Marsh will remain in prison. I don't wish any ill on him, but I am grateful that he doesn't get to walk the streets again and that people can rest. There's so much fear around him. Marsh would have been released on his 25th birthday. That's less than a year from now. Now he'll serve out the rest of his sentence. For some background, SB 1391 came about when the state legislature amended Prop 57 as part of juvenile justice reform. In September 2021, this appeal was dismissed by the 3rd District Court. Despite the numerous hearings, appeals, and changes to the law, Daniel Marsh's sentence of 52 years to life still stands. But because he was convicted as a juvenile, he is still eligible for parole after 25 years. If he is successful, he will be in his early 40s. The impact of Daniel Marsh's actions were felt by so many people. Special Agent Chris Campion had interrogated Daniel and said that the idea of him ever being released from custody filled him with dread and that he is in the top 3 people he is most scared of. Campion believes that Daniel was without a doubt a serial killer in the making. For the family and friends of Chip and Claudia that already suffered through so much pain, the added angst and uncertainty surrounding the legal changes and Daniel's possible release weighed heavily on them. Claudia's daughter, Victoria, described the family as exhausted. But they let their presence be known and their voices be heard throughout the trial and at all the press conferences and hearings. They are still working hard to keep Chip and Claudia's names alive and will continue to fight to see that justice for the loving and caring couple continues to be served. Story 4. Tia was a sparky girl who was full of life, but you took that life from her. All that lay ahead of her, a career, loves, and family of her own, will now never be. Tia Christine Sharp was born to parents Stephen and Natalie on the 30th of June 2000. Stephen split from Natalie when their daughter was a baby. Despite her parents' separation, her family was incredibly close-knit and they lived in Cutton, South London. Tia had a deep and close bond with her maternal grandmother Christine. Tia, Natalie, and Christine are a tight family unit, with Natalie saying the 3 of them were friends as well as family. The close bond continues as Tia grows up, with Christine saying Tia would occasionally call her mom. I wouldn't bat an eyelid, Christine said. The love that Natalie had for Tia was reciprocated as Tia adored her mother in return, and the pair were inseparable. Tia saw her father every holiday until the relationship between Stephen and Natalie soured. As she entered secondary school, Tia was confident, happy, and never afraid to voice her opinion and have herself be heard. She was feisty and brave, with her mom saying she was often the loudest in the room. In 2002, Christine was working as a barmaid in a pub in Rains Park, southwest London. It was here that she met a man named Stuart Hazel. He was 10 years her junior and they started a relationship in 2007 with Stuart moving into her home in New Addington. Natalie had had a fling with Hazel before he began seeing her mother. He shared a good bond with Tia and she called him Grandad, as did Tia's two younger brothers. Although she achieved good grades in school and was popular with her teachers, her attendance was an issue. In 2008, social services became concerned with Natalie and her partner using cannabis and therefore became involved with the family. A report issued by social services said that while there was no neglect or abuse towards Tia, the family dynamic was dysfunctional. After carrying out a probe into Tia's chaotic home life, social workers concluded in November 2011 that no further assessment would be needed. Instead, it was decided that Tia's school should be asked to keep an eye on her and report any concerns. Tia would regularly spend the night with Christine and Stuart. Even when Christine had to work a night shift, she would stay there with her step-grandfather. In June 2012, Tia was celebrating her birthday with her mother and grandmother. She had the option to bring a friend along for the celebrations and she chose Stuart, illustrating how close she was to him. August 2012. Unbeknownst to Natalie, Tia had messaged her grandmother and Stuart asking if it was okay if she stayed there for a couple of days. Stuart sent a text message to Natalie saying that Tia was welcome to stay. Christine wouldn't be there, but she could still stay if she wanted to. Tia was excited to go. She ran to kiss her mother goodbye and then set off to her grandmother's house. Thursday, August 2nd, Stuart meets Tia as she gets off the tram at 4:50 p.m. and CCTV follows them as they go shopping in New Addington. Later that night, Christine called the house and spoke to Stuart, asking if everything was okay, and he confirmed it was, and they were playing on the PlayStation together. The following day, Friday, August 3rd, Christine returned home from work and Stuart told her that Tia had gone into Couldn't to buy some new shoes 5 miles away in the Wick Gift Center. By 6 o'clock that night, she still hadn't returned home. So, Christine phoned Natalie, who confirmed she hadn't seen her either. They tried contacting her via text message and Facebook, but heard nothing back. They decided to go driving around the area to see if they could spot her, hoping perhaps the public transport was running late and that was causing a delay. By 10 o'clock and with still no sign, Christine, Stuart, and Natalie headed to the police station to report her as missing. Stuart told the investigators that he had seen Tia around midday, before she headed into Cutton to go shopping. A phone call from a neighbor also suggested that they had seen her leaving the property. They searched the house where she had been staying with her grandmother and Stuart, but no trace of her was found. As she clearly wasn't in the house, the police widened their investigation to the local area. The story of the missing 12-year-old spreads like wildfire, with major news outlets picking up on the story. Stuart Hazel was seen leading one of the searches. Police said that she had only taken a small amount of money with her and did not take her travel card or her mobile phone, adding that this was very out of character for her. Area Commander Neil Basu stressed the investigation was still a missing persons inquiry and did not suggest there were any suspects in the case. The family want Tia home. They miss her dreadfully. And I want to assure you of all the work the Met is We are doing everything we possibly can to find her and trying to support the family at this time. Let me give you a sense of the scale of the inquiry. At present, I have had Olympic resources redirected to help in the search for Tia. And over the last 3 days, or so, that has meant more than 100 extra uniform officers in the Kudin and Mitcham areas. There are over 80 officers working on this case. 40 of them detectives, 40 of them specialist search officers. We've collected more than 800 hours so far of CCTV footage from buses, from trams, and we've viewed more than 120 hours of that CCTV in live time. And that continues round the clock. I would also like to thank everybody in the Kutton and Mitcham communities that has helped with the investigation so far. I spent time with councillors and with members of the Pathfinders charity on the New Addington estate yesterday evening. I was completely moved by their generosity, their energy, and commitment. We were stopped many times on the way to and from by people handing out leaflets showing Tia. And to everyone who was doing that, I wanted to say thank you. And please continue to look for her. Can I once again thank every member of the public who has phoned into the incident room. The Met's priority at this time is to find Tia safe and well. The family were absolutely distraught. Natalie told a local news outlet, "We all feel terrible. We think she's been taken, but we just don't know. There's no CCTV. We know absolutely nothing. I wish to God I could tell you something. My baby girl walked out and she vanished." On August 7th, a press conference was held. DCI Nick Scholar gave the press and public a description of the missing Tia. CCTV image of Tia that was taken on Thursday evening, the second before she went missing. And in it, she's wearing the outer clothing that we believe she was wearing when she went missing. The only difference is the footwear. I'll hold it up. You'll see it's slightly different to the description that was initially released, in as much as it's not a yellow tube type top. You can see it's a yellow vest top, and on the front of it there's a pattern. It's an animal of some description, possibly the dog or a cat. The tight faded jeans are the same description, and she's wearing UGI boots in this photo, but she was wearing the black Nike trainers with the pink Nike swoosh on, so that's a slight difference. Tia's uncle, David Sharp, also made an appeal, begging for her to come home. Tia is a 12-year-old normal girl. She has never run away. She's got no reason to run away. She is a playful child. She's not an adult form of any way, but she is very clued up in traveling in local areas, and people she knows come to us, come home, phone the police, anything. And I want to say thank you to the police for doing everything that they can, and the public for being our support and being out there day and night. I urge you not to stop. I want Tia found, so please do what you're doing. There were 55 different sightings reported by members of the public, but the police weren't able to substantiate any of them. As Stuart Hazel was the last person to see Tia alive, he felt as if that made him a potential suspect, and so contacted ITV to give an interview and clear his name. On August 9th, he gave an interview to Mark Williams Thomas, an investigative journalist and former police officer for ITV News, denying that he had anything to do with the disappearance of his step-granddaughter. Well, if they believe what they read in the papers, they can do whatever they like, because I know deep down in my heart that Tia walked out of my house. She walked out of there. I know damn well because she was seen walking down the pathway. I know she made that track down to that way. What happened after that is I don't know. We're stuck inside here. Do you know what I mean? We've got all the papers outside all putting accusations down, and do you know what I mean? Bad-mouthing everyone, and it's just what you don't need. I know they're trying to help and that, but they can help in other ways. Do you know what I mean? By finding her back, get her home. In the middle of his interview, Christine came home and Hazel removed his microphone to pause the interview and offer her comfort. As there was still no sign of Tia, the police decided to conduct another search of the house. This time, with the assistance of police dogs, but still no trace of Tia was found. A week after she had been reported missing on Friday the 10th of August, and a day after he had given the interview with ITV, Stuart Hazel got up early and left the house. When Christine later woke up, she smelled something in her house, but couldn't locate where it was coming from. When the police arrived, they asked her to leave the house immediately so they could conduct another search. That afternoon, a fourth and final search was conducted of the house in New Addington. In the attic, they found a body. Due to the heat and the fact the body had been wrapped up and stored in the attic, the body had decomposed to the point where the person was visually unidentifiable. Cuddon Central MP Gavin Barwell said the police have yet to formally confirm that the body is Tia's. Yet this devastating development will come as a huge blow to her family and the community in New Addington, all of whom have worked tirelessly to try and find her over the past week. A post-mortem on the body began the same day the discovery had been made, August 10th, and was paused later that day. By the 16th of August, the post-mortem still had not been completed. However, at an inquest into the death which opened that day, it was confirmed that the body was that of Tia Sharp. Due to the state of decomposition, dental records had to be used to identify her. The post-mortem was later concluded without establishing a cause of death. Experts told This Is Cuddon Today that the delay in finding the body had made it much harder to determine exactly how Tia had died. And without a cause of death, the prosecution would find it much harder to build a case. However, detectives suspected, and it was widely reported, that Tia Sharp had potentially been smothered, although this was not officially proven to be the cause of death. Area Commander Neil Basu said the priority was now to support her devastated family as they tried to ascertain exactly what had happened. With Tia's body now being found, the eyes of investigators quickly fell on one person, Christine's partner, Stuart Hazel. But officers soon realized that Hazel was on the run. He was picked up on CCTV buying a bottle of vodka from a shop on Canning Hill Lane in South London. They warned the public not to approach him if they saw him and to instead call 999. The police quickly mobilized and launched a search to try and find him. Following a tip-off from a member of the public who had spotted him, he was arrested at 8.25 on Cannon Hill Common in Morton. As he was taken away in a police van, members of the public hurled abuse as it went past. The police also announced soon after that they had made 2 further arrests. Later that evening at 11.55, Christine was arrested on suspicion of murder, and her neighbor had been arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender. While Christine was being questioned, Natalie had to watch on television as her daughter's body was removed from the home. Due to the state of decomposition, Natalie was not allowed to see her daughter's body. Since news of the discovery broke, several people laid tributes for her near a garage close to her grandmother's house, which still had a cordon in place on the approach to it. Christine was later released on bail, but would not be allowed anywhere near Natalie or her other grandchildren. The police soon started to learn the sinister truth about the man Tia had called Granddad. Stuart Hazel came from a highly dysfunctional background and had a troubled relationship with his parents. During his childhood, he was on the radar of social services as his father was in prison and his mother was a sex worker. He would also soon end up in care. He struggled in school and would often skip classes. And according to Dr. Carrie Nixon, it was also clear that he had a low IQ. Hazel would later say that he had been raped when he was 16 years old. He had 30 previous convictions and had been to prison 3 times. His convictions included dealing drugs, burglary, criminal damage, theft, as well as racially motivated violence and grievous bodily harm, also known as GBH. As Hazel was still using drugs, this would often lead him to continued reckless behavior. For example, in 2010, he was convicted of carrying a machete and was subsequently given a 12-month custodial sentence. Despite this, Christine stood by him and said she never saw any violent behavior in the home. She said although he drank and had a criminal record, he was a gentle giant. She was prepared to put his past from before they met behind them. She was, however, unaware of the extent of his drug abuse and his increasingly sinister thoughts. As Tia continued to grow up, little did she or her family know that Hazel was having sexual fantasies about her. He was fascinated and fixated with her and was convinced that she loved him. He became infatuated with her, and as she started to develop into a young woman, these feelings started to intensify. In the last year of her life, he became increasingly more voyeuristic and started filming her in secret. On one occasion, she came home from school and started to put cream on her legs as they were dry, and he started to secretly record her. His filming of Tia was growing increasingly sinister, and he started filming her while she was asleep. Nick Scolola, who was the senior investigating officer, described one of these occasions. Hazel had filmed her while she was asleep, getting very close to her, but then pulling back when she stirred. He then panned the camera up to the wall momentarily to film his shadow looking over her. He removed the door on the bathroom and messed with the light fitting in her bedroom, which police later believed was so he could use that as a spy hole to watch her. He also began watching and searching for more extreme and violent pornography on his phone, including pedophilia. It has been suggested by forensic psychologist Dr. Carrie Nixon that Hazel may have made sexual advances towards Tia and murdered her when she rejected said advances and threatened to tell her mother. One thing that many people wanted answers to is why had it taken 4 searches to find her body in the attic? Investigators apologized to the family, saying this was the result of human error. Commander Neil Basu apologized to Tia Sharp's mother for the delay in finding her body. He said that a review would be undertaken to ensure such a failing is not repeated. On the 23rd of August, Police Commissioner Bernard Hogan Howe addressed the failure of his force to find her body. He said as Christine was released on bail, investigators turned their attention back to Stuart Hazel. He gave a defense case statement which said that he and Tia had been messing around and playing. During this, he alleged that she had fallen down the stairs but appeared to be unharmed and okay. He then said that after drinking excessively through the evening, he passed out, and upon waking up, he found her dead on the floor and as a result, hid her body in the attic. Once in the attic, he put her between the rafters and pushed her tight against the roof, where the roof met the floor in a dark area of the loft, covering the body with debris from around the attic. Next to the body, carefully wrapped in small plastic bags inside a black bin bag, were Tia's clothes that she was wearing that night, as well as her broken glasses. Christine was subsequently cleared of having any involvement in her granddaughter's killing. And on the 7th of December, the Metropolitan Police announced that she would not face charges. In a previous search, officers had found 2 memory cards, one of which was very well hidden in a door frame of a downstairs room. The memory cards in question contained both deleted and undeleted material made up of photos and videos. The last shot on the memory card had been deleted, but officers were able to recover it. The image was of Tia, who had been posed in a sexually suggestive position. They showed the image in question to a pathologist who determined that she was likely dead when the photograph had been taken. Other images showed Hazel posing naked in a similar position to the one she was seen in the photograph. The memory card also contained voyeuristic images of Tia taken when she was alive. In the early hours of the 12th of August, Hazel was charged with murder of the girl who had called him Granddad. He appeared before Camberwell Green Magistrates Court on the 13th of August via a video link. Dressed in a blue t-shirt, he was seen on the video link sitting at a table with a policewoman standing behind him. He spoke to confirm his name, date of birth, and his address as the Lindens, New Addington, South London, where Tia had been found dead. No plea was entered, and the case was committed to the Old Bailey Courthouse in London for trial. He was remanded in custody to Belmarsh Prison, where he was kept in isolation for his own safety. While in prison awaiting trial, Stuart Hazel wrote a letter to his father, and he was sticking to his story. He described her death as an accident and denied there was any sexual motive. His main concern was that his father didn't think his son was an ounce, a slang term for a pedophile. Tia Sharp was cremated on the 14th of September after a private family funeral. On the 5th of February 2013, the neighbor who had been arrested at the same time of Christine was charged with wasting police time after telling the police he had seen Tia alive on the day she was murdered. He appeared at Cutton Magistrates Court on the 28th of February, 2013, where he denied the charge against him and was released on bail for a one-day trial on July 29. On the 5th of August, 2013, he was found guilty of wasting police time and was sentenced to 5 months in prison. After an agonizing investigation, it was soon time for the trial of Stuart Hazel, and his plea was not guilty. He showed no emotion during his trial and refused to acknowledge any of Tia's family. The courtroom was shocked when they were shown the images that had been taken of Tia. When the photo of her that had been taken post-mortem was shown to the jury, her mother, Natalie, had to leave the courtroom traumatized and in tears. After 4 days of distressing evidence being given, Stuart Hazel changed his plea to guilty. Tia Sharp's father said, "Hearing what Hazel did to his daughter shattered his heart. Hazel will be sentenced tomorrow. In my opinion, it will not be enough. He should serve his time then be hung. The police say Stuart Hazel must be removed from society. Hazel is a violent and dangerous man who poses a significant risk to young girls. However, he refused to reveal exactly what happened that night or why he had taken her life in the most brutal way imaginable. When sentencing Hazel, the judge emphasized how the trust Christine and Natalie had placed in him had been shattered. He received life in prison with a minimum term of 38 years that he must serve before he can even be considered for parole. This will mean he will be 75 years old before he is eligible. The judge, Mr. Justice Nichols, said he could not impose a whole life tariff as he was not sure Hazel's motivation was sexual or that it was premeditated. He said Tia's mother trusted you to look after Tia. You breached that trust in the most grievous way possible. Your guilty plea came on day 5. You said you wished to avoid causing further stress to Tia's family. That is commendable, but they have had to endure 4 days of a very public trial. There were gasps from the public gallery. Tia's family was sobbing loudly. And as Hazel was sent down, there was the cry of beast from a man in the public gallery. Now, the judge said that he could have imposed a whole life tariff on Stuart Hazel. But to do that, he would have had to be absolutely sure that the murder itself was sexually motivated. He had no doubt. He said that Hazel had sexually assaulted Tia Sharp, but he had to be sure that the murder itself was sexually motivated and he was not sure. Now, in his sentencing remarks, he said to Hazel that Tia was a sparky girl who was full of life, but you took that life from her. All that lay ahead of her, a career, loves, and family of her own, will now never be. Now, after the sentence was handed down, Tia's mother, Natalie Sharp, left the court this morning. She was asked whether she believed that the sentence, whether she was happy with the sentence, to which she replied no, and an uncle of Tia also said that the sentence should have been longer. The aftermath of Tia's death was felt by so many people. The house that Christine and Stuart had lived in and where Tia had been murdered was demolished in 2013. In July 2013, her father Stephen Carter said he backed a plan for websites to block certain search terms and warn people when they try and view illegal content. In November 2013, partly in response to the murders of Tia Sharp and April Jones, a little girl who was abducted and murdered by a stranger, the search engines Google and Bing modified their systems to block results from searches aimed at producing child abuse images. Tia Sharp was a confident, happy, and feisty young girl whose trust was betrayed in the most appalling way imaginable. Those who knew and loved her are determined that she will be remembered for the joy she brought to so many people and not by the tragic way that she left this earth. Story 5. Kendrick Johnson was born on October 10, 1995 to Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson. He was the youngest of his siblings, and Jacqueline said he was the laughter, the joy, and the life of the family home. He was described as fun, polite, well-mannered, and very talented when it came to sports. Kendrick was also a keen basketball player and also played for the school's football team. Along with this, he loved science and mathematics. His dad said he had a knack for numbers, keeping accounts in his head of all his allowances. Kendrick had a promising and exciting future ahead of him with big dreams of playing professional football. One day, Lowndes High School is a sprawling campus near the Georgia-Florida state line, attended by 3,000 Students. The school day drew to a close and students and staff began to filter out of the building. 17-year-old Kendrick was set to stay after school for a basketball game. He often stayed for sports and various activities, so when he didn't return home after the game had finished, Jacqueline at first wasn't too worried. But Kendrick didn't come home at all that night. And as his 10 p.m. curfew rolled around, Jacqueline decided to drive to the school herself to try and find him. With no luck spotting him anywhere, she called the police and reported him missing at 12:30 a.m. The police tried to assure Jacqueline that Kendrick was probably out with some friends or maybe even a girlfriend. But his mother knew this wasn't the case and that something was deeply wrong. Jacqueline was back at the school frantically handing out flyers and asking anyone and everyone if they had seen her son. She spoke with the school counselors and staff and it was determined that Kendrick had not been present in his fourth period weight training class the previous day. Jacqueline commented on how unusual it was for her son to skip classes and the staff agreed with her. Around the same time, a group of students were in the school's gymnasium in the corner by the wrestling mats. One of the students said she noticed feet with socks coming out of the hole in one of the rolled-up mats that was in a vertical position. At first, she thought someone was playing a joke, but soon realized something was desperately wrong and called some of her friends for help. More students and a teacher tried to help free whoever was inside. The teacher said strong smells were emitting from inside the mat, and once upright, the mat was pulled down to the floor. They could see blood and vomit where the mat had been. "We're coming to Lown High School now. There's a dead body out here." "Okay, we're at Sir Lown High School in the old gym." Tragically, they found the body of 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson. He had been headfirst in the center of the vertical rolled-up wrestling mat. His jeans were unzipped and his front pockets were partially pulled out. In his left pocket was an LG phone and his headphones were found wrapped around his hand. When the mat was first unrolled, Kendrick had one arm stretched above his head and the other down around his waist. His face was bloody, bloated, and swollen beyond all recognition. It is one of the most horrific images we have ever seen. Some officers were in the school already following up on the missing persons report, but more police were dispatched at 10:32 a.m. Arriving at the school at 10:35. Classes were changing over, people were milling around, and word was quickly spreading that a fellow student had been discovered deceased. Tragically, Jacqueline would find this out by overhearing a telephone call. Jacqueline and Kenneth said they weren't allowed to see Kendrick or enter the gym. And Kendrick's sister had to identify her brother by looking at his shoe that was found on the floor. The school went into lockdown and one student said as everyone was gathering outside, it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Kendrick was pronounced dead at the scene and his time of death would later be confirmed as before 2 p.m. on January 10, 2013. Police quickly deemed the case to be nothing more than a tragic accident, but many others weren't convinced. Looking at the way in which Kendrick was found, the mat stood at nearly 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. When rolled up, the hole in the center measured 14 in wide. Kendrick's shoulders measured 19 in across and he was 5 feet 10 inches in tall. Police argued it was possible that if Kendrick was trying to squeeze into the center of the mat, he could have scrunched his shoulders. together with his arms outstretched to make himself narrower. But his parents maintained that his size versus the size of the mat alone was enough to debunk this theory. The reason why police came to the conclusion they did was because of the shoe found near Kendrick's head on the floor. One student said that he and Kendrick shared a pair of shoes and that after class they would go to the mats, jump up and throw the shoes inside the middle of the hole. Other students also told police that it was common for them to leave their belongings in the mats when they didn't want to pay for a locker. Investigators speculated that Kendrick had got inside the gym mat when he was trying to retrieve his shoes and tragically he had become stuck and suffocated. However, students and friends of Kendrick said they would always tilt the mat to the side and grab their belongings out the bottom as opposed to going inside the mats. It made no sense as to why Kendrick would go headfirst into the rolled-up mat rather than just pushing it aside or pushing it over to grab his shoes. The shoe on the ground below Kendrick's head inside the mat was on top of a pool of blood and vomit, but there was no blood or vomit on the shoe itself. The other shoe that made up this pair were lying nearby. But if this in fact was what happened, due to Kendrick's size and how tightly he would have been stuck inside the mat, even more questions were raised as to how one shoe would end up outside the mat and the other would be inside. If he was so wedged in with little to no space, how would he have been able to get the shoe out from the bottom, throw it up past his feet with it landing on the floor? The mat was so light, he could have pushed that rock and it would have fell over. I tried to get in it. I couldn't get no forward my neck muscles into the mat. No matter who you are, how much money your parents have, the color of your skin, everyone deserves justice. Everyone. The crime scene photos also showed a pair of gray, white, and orange Nike shoes tucked in behind Kendrick's knees. A police report stated that a pair of shoes that bore similar colors to the ones found behind Kendrick's knees were also found on the floor by the bleachers. People began to wonder if he had been reaching for his shoes. Where did the other pair by his knees come from? And what if any relevance did the shoes by the bleachers bear? Jacqueline was able to confirm part of this. She said that the black and white Adidas shoes were the ones he always changed into in the gym, but the shoes that were found behind his knees were the ones he had been wearing. So, how did they come to be in that position? According to a police report, a hoodie, a yellow folder, and a textbook were also found in the gym on the floor. The folder and textbook were later determined to be Kendrick's. There was also blood on the wall about 50 feet away from where Kendrick was found. This blood did not belong to Kendrick and it had been there for some time. No blood belonging to Kendrick was found outside of the mat. Investigators said that determining whose blood was on the wall would involve testing over 3,000 people in the school, and a lot of students and teachers may not even be at the school anymore. The shoes found by the bleachers showed red stains on them, and some said it looked like the sleeve of the hoodie did, too. But officers did not take the hoodie and orange and black gym shoes into evidence, saying there was no blood on them. But determining which pair of shoes this actually was remains unclear. Did these shoes belong to Kendrick? No. When you look at these shoes that were at the scene, what stands out to you? The blood on the shoes. But investigators say tests show the stains are something other than blood. So the shoes were not collected as potential evidence. I don't understand why. CNN took the photos to independent private investigator and former FBI Special Agent Harold Kopis. If you were on this scene, Would this have been something you would have left? No. Bag and tag. There's no indication. Investigators ever even looked for the owner of the shoes or this hooded sweatshirt found a few feet from Kendrick's body. And if you look real close, there's something on this particular cuff. And then the question is, was it blood? Did you test it? According to the crime lab report, no. They know something happened in that gym and they don't want it to come out. For the Johnsons, there's no stronger indicator than this photo. It's of what appears to be blood dripping down a wall. Here's what Loudoun County Lieutenant Stride Jones told CNN about that wall in May. And we tested it and it was blood. Now, we did DNA testing and it was not the blood of Kendrick Johnson. If it wasn't Kendrick's blood, whose blood was it? Did you ever find out who it was or any involvement? No. As of now, we haven't no. But it doesn't appear to be related to our crime in any way. What do you think about the decision not to test it further? You can't explain it? If you're running the crime scene, then you're going to say that's potential evidence. Obviously, we're going to check this out and find out who does it belong to. This is an athletic gym. I mean, obviously, this is where they conduct various athletic classes and instructions at. A kid couldn't have scraped their knee or arm or something and got that much blood on the wall. There's 6 impacts. The opinion of our crime scene personnel after looking at it closely. The blood appeared as if it had been there for an extended period of time. It didn't appear to be very fresh. There is no way that they would allow whoever was supposed to clean this gym to leave that blood on that wall. Georgia state law stipulates that the coroner be contacted immediately on the discovery of a body, but Coroner Bill Watson said he was not notified until 6 hours later. I don't know what to think. According to Georgia law, Coroner Bill Watson should have been contacted immediately. Kendrick's body was found at about 10:30. I was notified at 3:45. Lieutenant Stride Jones is with the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office. It's a very time-consuming process to basically work your way from the outside in. Once our investigators got to the deceased, the coroner was contacted immediately. The only reason that I was questioned this instant whatsoever was I wasn't called to the scene in a timely fashion. Watson also stated on his death investigation report that there was no cooperation from law enforcement at the scene and Kendrick's body had been noticeably moved and the scene had been compromised. On January 14, Lowndes County authorities said that Kendrick's body showed no injuries following the preliminary autopsy. There were some marks on Kendrick's body, but these were only small and superficial abrasions. On May 2, Kendrick Johnson's death was officially ruled as an accident. The autopsy stated it was due to accidental positional asphyxia. Just 1 hour after this announcement was made, Kendrick's family, friends, and civil rights activists marched in protest outside the high school. They still had many questions, and the situation and findings just didn't make any sense to them. If Kendrick had become stuck inside the mats himself, and this was an accident, how could not a single person have heard him call for help or seen anything when a steady stream of students and sports teams were going in and out of the gym until 8 p.m. that day? Others argue that the mats were so thick and compacted that hearing anything would have been virtually, if not completely impossible. The family asked Reverend Floyd Rose from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference if he could conduct an independent investigation into the case. Rose along with Lee Touchton, a lead investigator for the SCC and the former president of the local chapter of the NAACP, agreed to take a look. Attorney Benjamin Crump, who has represented many families in high-profile cases, including those of Michael Brown, George Floyd, and Trayvon Martin, began working with the Johnson family. So, let's take a breath for Breonna as well. Let's take a breath for Ahmaud Arbery as well. Let's take a breath for Taryn Crutcher as well. Let's take a breath for Pamela Turner, who was killed in Houston. Let's take a breath for Alton Sterling, who was killed in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Let's take a breath for Philando Castile. C.B. King Jr. also came on board and became the family's lead attorney. It defies all logic, the rules of science, and common sense that a 17-year-old athlete would climb into a wrestling mat and get stuck trying to get a tennis shoe and stop breathing. What's more likely is that someone rolled him up in that mat, Benjamin Crump said. The Johnsons' legal team said that the information provided by the paramedics contradicted what law enforcement had said. The paramedic report stated that Kendrick's body was partially inside the gym mat, but that his head, torso, and arms were exposed. This went against officers' claims that Kendrick's body was found upside down, completely stuck inside the mat. The paramedics' report also noted bruising near Kendrick's right jaw, but no bruises were mentioned on the autopsy report, but the lieutenant that oversaw the investigation said bruising was likely discoloration caused by leviditis, which occurs when the heart stops pumping and blood settles in the body. The family called on Dr. William R. Anderson to look into the autopsy report. Dr. Anderson had been in the field of forensic pathology for over 40 years at that point and was happy to help. From looking at the autopsy report, Anderson said that for Kendrick to die of positional asphyxiation, there would have had to have been fluid in his lungs. But the autopsy report did not cite this, and it appeared the lungs not only didn't have any fluid in them, but they were normal in every regard. Fluid in the lungs should have made the lungs heavier, but they were of a normal weight. Anderson said that this was the first red flag that caught his attention and agreed to perform a second autopsy. On June 6, a Lance County judge granted the Johnson family permission to exhume Kendrick's body so the second autopsy could be performed. And 8 days later, the 17-year-old's body was taken from Sunset Hill Cemetery. When Kendrick's body reached Dr. Anderson, he was shocked to find that Kendrick's organs, his brain, heart, lungs, liver, and other viscera were missing, and in their place was newspaper. The coroner said the organs were not sent to the funeral home because they were too decomposed and were destroyed through natural process beforehand. The funeral home said they received Kendrick's body without the organs, and replacing them with paper or sawdust is actually common practice while embalming. The president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, Dr. Gregory Schmonk, said he had never heard of this practice. Nonetheless, Dr. Anderson pressed on with the autopsy, looking for anything else that may have been overlooked before. The family waited patiently for him to reveal his findings. His report stated that Kendrick had died from an unexplained apparent non-acal blunt force trauma. Following this, the family, who had spent the last 9 months marching the streets of Valdosta demanding answers and attention for Kendrick's case, begged for his death to be investigated as a homicide. Dr. Anderson agreed and said the case needed to be reopened because Kendrick's injuries appeared to have been inflicted by another person. Anderson also claimed that federal officials had told him they agreed with his findings, but could not pursue charges because there was no evidence of a civil rights violation. Anderson's theory is that there had been a fight in the gym during which Kendrick was most likely placed in a sort of stranglehold by the person or persons who might not have intended to kill him. It probably happened very quickly and they panicked, he said. 100 days after Kendrick's body was discovered, scores of interviews and hours of investigation. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation determined Kendrick accidentally smothered to death. We examined all the alternatives that were presented to us, and the only one that fit the physical evidence and the forensic evidence and the testimonial evidence we received was this is an accident. In October that year, a $10,000 reward was offered by an anonymous donor to anyone with information leading to the arrest or conviction of someone in Kendrick's case. Attorneys for the family of Kendrick called on authorities to release the surveillance videos from in and around the school, which they said was being withheld. But an attorney for Lown County Schools said that the Johnson family had been invited to view the surveillance tapes on several occasions. 290 hours of material from all 35 cameras inside and outside of the gym were gone through. And on October 30th, a judge ordered the release of these tapes. A day after the judge's announcement, U.S. Attorney and former politician Michael J. Moore announced that his office would open a formal review into the death of Kendrick Johnson. I will follow the facts wherever they lead. Over 100 people were subpoenaed as a result, and tens of thousands of emails and text messages were reviewed. However, the footage from the school's cameras raised more questions than answers for many people. There were 2 gyms at the school, and Kendrick was found in what was referred to as the old gym. It is important to note that piecing together a definitive timeline of what happened using the cameras and footage available has proven to be an immense task for the people that have reviewed this. Nonetheless, the cameras and footage have been a huge part and focus of this case. CNN secured access to the videos very early on. They hired forensic video analyst Grant Fredericks to look at the material. Fredericks' examination showed that at least an hour of video was missing from all 4 cameras inside the old gym. Those files are not original files. They're not something that an investigator should rely on for the truth of the video. They've been altered in a number of ways, primarily in image quality and likely in dropped information loss. There are also a number of files that are corrupted because they've not been processed correctly and they're not playable. So, I can't say why they were done that way, but they were not done correctly and they were not done thoroughly. So, we're missing information right now. What they've done is they have left it up to the school district to define what it is they want to provide the police. And I think that probably is a mistake. There is a whole of time where none of the cameras provide any record that I've been provided. There are 4 cameras in the gym that records motion from when the lights turn on in the morning until when the lights are turned off at night, except for the area of interest. The first camera captures images from the start of the day until 12:04 p.m. Then nothing. It picks up again at 10:09 p.m. There's consistent surveillance from the second camera until 11:05 a.m. Then it stops and picks up again more than 2 hours later at 1:15 p.m. The third camera also drops at 11:05 a.m. It picks Up again at 1:16 p.m. And from the final camera, there's surveillance until 12:04 p.m. No recording for more than an hour. Then it picks up again at 10:09 p.m. I would absolutely expect there to be some record of that activity, and we don't have any here. Do you believe it's a coincidence that that time period in the gym is missing? Oh boy. Investigators are always suspicious and should be suspicious, and it's suspicious that that time period is not there. So yes, I would be suspicious, and until I have the digital video system in my hand, until I can say, or an investigator can say, everything is intact, this was what's recorded, I would still be highly suspicious of this. Each surveillance server has its own internal clock, and one server's clock may not match up to another's. The director of technology for Lown County Schools said that the servers do not communicate with each other to sync up their clocks. Not having that time sync capability can lead to huge differences in timings between servers. For example, when one camera captures what is happening at 12 p.m., another camera on a separate server could capture the same moment, but the timestamp shows it as 12:10 p.m., but in actuality, there is no 10-minute gap between the footage. The footage was exported from the schools 2 Integral Technology servers and 1 Toshiba surveillance server. The footage from the Integral cameras showed approximately 36 hours of footage from the school's old gym and surrounding areas, and the surveillance cameras showed approximately 48 hours of the C-wing and administrative office areas. Scott Forth, the senior technology technician with Lown County Schools, exported the footage under the supervision of detectives and gave it to investigators on an external hard drive the very afternoon Kendrick was found. Fredericks was able to find Kendrick on camera entering the school early in the morning, and he last saw him at 10:09 p.m. walking into the old gym. However, because of the incorrect timestamps, this is not accurate. Although Kendrick was spotted entering the gym at 1:09, the more reliable timestamp on the footage places Kendrick going in at 1:28 p.m. The Integral server is over 20 minutes behind the footage. The Valdosta Daily Times also reviewed the footage in great depth, and their research showed an awful lot. Although the timestamps were not in sync, there is no discrepancy in Kendrick's route to the gym. The surveillance footage shows Kendrick entering the C-wing near the school's foreign language classrooms at 1:25 p.m. He is walking by himself and carrying the yellow folder that would later be found near his body. He turns the corner near the B-wing stairs and continues to walk down the hallway in front of the guidance and administration officers. He doesn't stop to talk to anyone. No one appears to be following him, and he does not appear to be following anyone himself. The last time stamp video of Kendrick shows him opening the doors to the hallway that leads to the old gym at 1:28 p.m. The rest of Kendrick's walk was picked up by the 2 separate Integral surveillance servers. These videos do not contain timestamps, but the footage can be matched to the image stills from the case file that were printed from the surveillance system. There does appear to be an almost 10-minute gap between a still image from the case file that shows Kendrick outside the door to the old gym at 12:59 p.m. and another still image that shows him inside the gym at 10:09 p.m. This was the time that the forensic video analyst Grant Frederick saw. But it appears that this discrepancy again is due to the servers being out of sync. The surveillance cameras in the gym are activated when the camera detects a change in light. A student that moves across the cameras Field of view can trigger the camera to record, but not always. The camera breaks each image into blocks and measures the number of blocks that change at any given moment. A certain percentage of blocks has to change before the camera starts to record. If a student walks directly in front of the camera, more blocks are changed because the student is occupying more of the image. If a student is further away, the number of blocks changed may not hit the threshold to trigger the camera to start recording, according to Integral Technologies documents. This explained why some students in the footage appeared to vanish without reason and may have made it seem that the footage had been altered. What nobody was able to find, however, was any video showing what happened inside the old gym on any timestamp on any camera at any point. The old gym's cameras were positioned in an area where the resting mats were not visible. So, there is no footage that captures Kendrick entering the mat and no footage that can definitively say how he died. There is also no footage that shows him leaving the gym at any point, but we know from the attendance records that Kendrick never made it to his fourth period class and was marked as absent. Since the initial export of the footage, the servers containing the raw video data have been locked in a vault. The only time they have been removed was at the request of the Johnson family. The family's attorney, C.B. King, requested the images that showed Kendrick in the old gym, and those images were given to the family. The servers were then placed back into the vault. C.B. King said, "We don't have any time code with which to synchronize the events that are shown in the video. Either the cameras did this on their own or a human being interacted to make these cameras do these things. The fact that this particular camera out of all the others is out of focus, that this is not positioned in such a way that you get any images showing the top edge of the mat, we believe is anything but a coincidence." In regards to the time code on the videos, Scott Forth, who exported the footage, said that the way the software works is it allows image stills to be created and printed with timestamps, but does not allow video to be exported with timestamps. Lee Touchton and Reverend Floyd Rose, who had been enlisted by the family to look into the case, ultimately determined that they found allegations of a cover-up to be unfounded. "When this thing all started, I really thought there was something to it," Rose said. "Either he wasn't murdered or whoever did it was so powerful that they were able to hide him and cover up and have all these people lie. If this was the 60s and you asked me that and it was Valdosta, Georgia, I would say, well, maybe. But I just don't believe that. Nobody has convinced me of that." Saturday, January 11, 2014 marked the one-year anniversary of Kendrick being found. Protests, rallies, and town meetings had been held regularly with the community coming together to take part and listen to people such as Reverend Al Sharpton talk about the case. At the end of January, the $10,000 reward offered up was rescinded as it was only good for 90 days after it was first offered. The legal battles continued for the Johnson family. And in February, they sued the Harrington Funeral Home, the funeral home that held Kendrick, accusing them of negligence and fraud. They said that the funeral home had not been honest with them about Kendrick's body and his organs being missing and his body being stuffed with newspaper. But the case against the funeral home was eventually dropped, and an investigation found they didn't violate any rules. This did raise questions about the findings of the second autopsy. Dr. Anderson stated that to die of positional asphyxiation, there would have had to have been fluid in his lungs, which wasn't stated on the first autopsy. But Kendrick's organs, including his lungs, were removed by the time the second autopsy took place. This meant that they were impossible to analyze for a second time to either confirm or dispute the findings of the first autopsy. A month later, an anonymous email was sent. The email detailed an alleged confession of an ex-classmate killing Kendrick and implicating 4 people in total. But upon looking into it, the sheriff's office ultimately deemed this confession to be based on rumors and hearsay, deeming it baseless. 4 months after this, the Johnson family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Lowndes Board of Education, its superintendent, and the principal of the school. The suit alleged that Kendrick was violently assaulted, severely injured, suffered great physical pain and mental anguish, and subjected to insults and loss of life. The lawsuit also alleged that the school were negligent and violated Kendrick's constitutional right to equal protection based on race. It stated that the school board did not properly investigate previous incidents involving altercations between Kendrick and other students, stating Kendrick had been repeatedly harassed and attacked. Shortly after this, 7 members of the Johnson family, including Kenneth and Jacqueline, were found guilty of obstruction following a trial when they blocked people from entering the Lowndes County Judicial Complex during a protest. Back in 2013, they were sentenced to a suspended 1 year in jail, and no further action would be taken as long as no further arrests were made within a year, which they were not. Kendrick's parents then filed a $100 million lawsuit. The lawsuit named 38 defendants, including a local FBI agent called Rick Bell, his 2 sons, Brian and Brandon, who were classmates of Kendrick and other students. Also accused were several officials with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the Valdosta Police Department, the City of Valdosta, the Lowndes County Sheriff's Department, and the Lowndes County School District, all of whom the family alleged conspired to cover up their son's murder. The suit alleged FBI agent Rick encouraged his 2 sons, Brian and Brandon, to attack Kendrick with the help of another schoolmate and an unnamed John Doe and Jane Doe. The lawsuit stated that Jane Doe induced Kendrick to enter the gymnasium, where he was then met by the 2 brothers and another student who fatally beat him and placed him in the gym mat. The brothers, Kendrick's mother claimed, had been harassing her son previously, and she had reported this to the school before. According to Jacqueline, Kendrick phoned her as he got off the school bus on the way to a game one day. He told her that he and Brian had had an altercation on the bus. Kendrick's friends said that Brian had been playing around but was being rough, and Brian grabbed Kendrick's dreadlocks and pushed his head down. A fight escalated, and after this Kendrick was driven home in the deputy's car while Brian stayed to watch the game with his parents. Federal investigators felt there was enough to look into these claims and seized the brothers' phones and computers. They also seized the electronics belonging to the brothers' parents and one of the brothers' girlfriends. Video footage from the school showed one of the brothers walking around with what many speculated was blood on his upper right arm, but he explained that this was simply a logo. Video surveillance appeared to show that neither of the Bell brothers could be seen entering or exiting the gym at any pertinent time. The Lowndes County Sheriff's Department maintained at least one of the brothers was not on campus when Kendrick was last seen alive, and the other was in another part of the building. The brothers themselves said they were good friends with Kendrick and had absolutely nothing to do with his death. Now, a Channel 2 Action News investigation into the mystery surrounding the death of a Valdosta teenager found in an upright gym mat at school. Two young men at the focus of the Kendrick Johnson controversy have declined to talk to investigators, a grand jury, and an on-camera interview until now. I'm going to ask my photographer to push in tight on your face. Okay. Our viewers can read your expression. Did you have anything to do with the death of Kendrick Johnson? No. He was like one of my good friends. Even at the time of his death, you know, every word we broadcast of this is going to be scrutinized by the blogosphere, the Twitter sphere and so on. Yes, sir. It should be, and I want everybody to know the truth, and I mean they can ridicule me and they can say whatever they want, but in the end the truth will prevail. And everybody will find that me and my brother have been innocent and always will be innocent. Are you more convinced today than ever that KJ was the victim of foul play? Yes. And with some of what the Bells say. No, they weren't friends. And in a lawsuit, Johnson's parents alleged a group, including the Bell brothers, sons of an FBI agent, violently assaulted their son, leading to his death. None of the allegations that were made were without research. But both Bells maintain they have rock-solid alibis. Did you see Kendra Johnson? No, sir. Not at any point during that day. Where were you? I was in class. I was in class. First block. Second block, third block, and fourth block. Close to the gym? No. Did you see Kendrick that day? No, I did not. The suit suggests the brothers sought revenge for a brief fight between Brian and Kendrick on a team bus. The year before, we were still friends. Who is that about anyway? I can't even remember. It was so small to us. It was ridiculous. Is it possible you were involved in any witness tampering or obstruction? No, sir. In no possible way whatsoever. Have you obstructed justice in any way? No. Have you tampered with any witnesses? Tried to influence anybody? Tried to stop somebody from talking in the Kendrick Johnson investigation? No. Where our viewers can look in your eyes. Did you have anything to do with the death of Kendrick Johnson? No, sir. Nor me or my family had anything to do with his death. Both Bells maintain they have rock-solid alibis. Where were you? I was in class. Videos, pictures, and theories abound online about what happened. Some involving school surveillance video. We talked to Brandon Bell about his appearance. I was changing clothes before I had to leave for the wrestling tournament that we were going to. And I went in there to check my weight the first time. I changed, and then the shirt that was assumed to have blood on it that they had circled and said blood, it actually said RLX. It's a type of polo. My objective is to only get justice for my son. Have you prayed for the Johnsons? Yes, sir. I have. I hope that they found justice, and I hope that they do find out the truth about their son. Brian said he did not see Kendrick on the school campus at all that day. But a 2021 review of the case, a documentary entitled Finding Kendrick Johnson, uncovered a once heavily redacted and missing FBI report. We haven't inserted any images of said report in this video out of respect for the people that put 4 years worth of work into the documentary and finding the report, but we will describe it for the sake of giving all the context and information possible. If you are interested in viewing it, we highly recommend and encourage everyone watch the documentary themselves. The report in part shows various stills of video footage from the day Kendrick died. Once heavily redacted, the now unredacted version appears to clearly show Brian Bell walking alongside Kendrick in the school. And according to the documentary, the images in the report can trace both the brothers on campus that day. Another page of the report gives descriptions of the images shown and is also cited. In relation to the image of Kendrick and Brian in the same frame, it actually names them both as being the people in the image. This contradicts what the brothers say and what law enforcement have said happened that day. And what was on the footage? Jim Elliott, the Lown County attorney, said the allegations made about the brothers were in a deposition. Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson admitted under oath that they didn't have any evidence that directly implicated the Bell brothers and Kendrick's death, but that they believed they had something to do with what happened to him. Ebony magazine had previously run several articles about Kendrick's death, and they had used pseudonyms to talk about Brian and Brandon. Many people argued that although the brothers weren't named, it was very clear who was being spoken about in the articles. Brian Bell's Florida State University sports scholarship offer was revoked following this. Your brother had a football scholarship offered to FSU. Yes, sir. He did. They pulled it back on signing day. So, how low did you get? To the lowest. The lowest you can go. And the parents of Brian and Brandon subsequently filed a $5 million slander and libel lawsuit in federal court against the publisher of Ebony magazine and the writer Frederick Rosen. No law enforcement official has ever named either of the Bell brothers as suspects in the death of Kendrick, and no charges against them have ever been filed. Attorney Michael J. Moore, who had vowed to take on the case, resigned in 2015. All his cases went to his successor except Kendrick's. Kendrick's was transferred to the Northern District of Ohio under another U.S. attorney shortly after receiving Kendrick's case. This attorney also resigned. Despite the resignations, the Department of Justice investigation continued looking into Kendrick's case. The 23rd of May, 2015 marked the Lown County School graduation, and the year that Kendrick Johnson should have graduated himself alongside his classmates. Protesters lined up in front of the school in support of Kendrick and his family. And the family revealed despite their requests, the school had refused to have Kendrick's memory honored during the event. In March 2016, Kendrick's parents withdrew the $100 million wrongful death lawsuit. The Johnson family were then subsequently ordered to pay up to $850,000 in attorney's fees and were sued for more than $1 million in defamation charges. Judge Richard Porter said their claims were substantially frivolous, substantially groundless, or substantially vexatious. The family appealed this, but their appeal was dismissed. Later that year, a Kendrick Johnson supporter named Bobby Worthy filed a complaint with the FBI in Valdosta and the Judicial Qualifications Commission. The complaint alleged that Judge Porter fell asleep at least 6 times throughout the various trial dates, and showed favoritism to the 8 white defense attorneys. Soon after this, Benjamin Crump, who had been working closely with the Johnson family since the start, stepped down. In a letter, Crump informed Jacqueline and Kenneth that his firm would be unable to continue its legal representation in coordination with their lead attorney, C.B. King Jr., in June 2016. The Department of Justice announced that the independent federal investigation into Kendrick's death found insufficient evidence to support criminal charges. They said in the 2021 documentary Finding Kendrick Johnson, Kenneth Johnson said that during a meeting, the Department of Justice said the shoe under Kendrick's head was planted there. Another lawsuit was filed by the Johnson family. It named some of the claims in the previous suits and had a total of 41 defendants. In June 2017, this lawsuit was dismissed without prejudice. A month later, the Johnson family filed their third lawsuit in the Superior Court of Bibb County. The defendants listed ranged from Lowndes County officials to former classmates of Kendrick. In January 2018, Kendrick's family filed to have his body exhumed for a third time, and another autopsy was set to take place. It would be performed again by Dr. William Anderson. Kendrick's dad, Kenneth, said the family did not want to have to do this, but they were still desperately searching for the truth. 10 months later, the third autopsy results were in, and they showed non-acal blunt force trauma to Kendrick's right neck and right thorax. Anderson sent his findings to 2 other pathologists who both confirmed the same as what he had thought and agreed with what he had found. Following this, the Johnson family felt the evidence pointing to a homicide was now more than overwhelming, and it needed to be presented to a jury. My family won't be satisfied until someone is behind bars and someone is convicted for what happened, said Kenneth. Going over it with common sense. How can it be an accident? In April 2019, Sheriff Ashley Polk wrote a letter to federal prosecutors saying that he had met with Kenneth and a captain in the sheriff's office. All 3 of them agreed that it was vitally important they receive any unreleased files relating to the federal investigation. Federal prosecutors told him he could have the case file, which Polk described as 17 filing cabinets worth of records, computer towers, and hard drives. Sheriff Polk said this file was the final missing piece. He needed to give the case a full and complete examination. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think the people deserve it, he said. I think the family deserves it. In June 2020, an online petition was started in regards to reopening Kendrick's case, which gained huge traction very quickly. Johnson County Sheriff has reopened the investigation into the death of Kendrick Johnson. The teen's body was found in a rolled-up gym mat in a high school in 2013. His death ruled accidental. Sheriff Ashley Polk says his office has finally been able to get boxes of documents to review given to them by the federal government. They'll also be reinteering people connected to the case. Sheriff Polk says he's in touch with Johnson's family. And while he's not saying anyone did anything wrong, he is going to follow the evidence and lead the investigation himself. He expects the review to take at least 6 months. Kendrick's case was officially reopened in March 2021. Sheriff Polk stated that he was not claiming there was something wrong with the original investigation or the original investigation's conclusion of an accidental death was wrong. He said, "I've never told anybody what I believe about this case, whether it was accidental or murder. I would never say that until I could see all the evidence. If it was an accident, it's a very, very unusual way for something to happen." A week after the case was reopened, some possible new evidence was presented. A 25-second recording, which was sold to the Johnson family for $1,000, appeared to depict an alleged confession. The tape had been secretly recorded a week prior. "They're going to catch me. Anyways. I should have never done this. I was young and stupid. Kendrick didn't deserve this man." A couple of seconds go by and he ends with a very tearful, "They're going to catch me anyways." The family says the audio was secretly recorded by the person's family member who sold it to them for $1,000. Lown County Sheriff Ashley Polk says they are working to authenticate the clip and will ask the GBI for help. He also confirmed the recording may possibly be someone already questioned in the case. Earlier this month, the sheriff announced he was reopening this case after getting new evidence from a federal investigation. But 2 months later, this turned out to be nothing more than a cruel and heartless hoax. This is a terrible hoax. I mean, this woman has lost a child, and I can't believe somebody would even do this for any amount of money. Kendrick's case is now officially open once more and being looked into again. Sheriff Polk said, "We're starting fresh, so it's like a brand new investigation. I'm going to try and dispel all the rumors and accusations. I just want the truth. That's all I want." As the rain gently falls and the night grows deeper, thank you for joining me here at Mr. Nightcared. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the importance of staying aware even as we seek comfort in the quiet of the night. Let the rain carry you to a peaceful sleep. And until we meet again, stay safe. Stay curious and let the night watch over you.